All right, good morning. Let's go ahead and get started. This is probably the most people in the office in weeks. It is, right? Yes, I feel productive already. Back at 1 a.m. Look at Lauren. It's gonna be great. No self. That was my choice.
Then we'll be on the same. Where are you sitting? We should get our seats.
And if you look at the topic, some of you are like, this doesn't apply to me, and you are absolutely right. So Jeff's gonna start this morning. We're gonna actually start staff meeting at 10. I had him for 9:30, but he needs to go at 10 and has about an hour presentation. So if you don't have anything related to legislation, you don't help with bills, you don't help read them, you don't help with fiscal notes, you may leave and come back at 10 o'clock. I'm gonna have you self-select right now. Later, we will start discussing, I'll tell you which teams to stay with. But today, this is just gonna work. Self-select, see you at 10. We came once,
You got the detailed program a number of years ago.
I'm out. Good job.
This is not within code.
Let some people self-select.
This is not a white chair.
Most of them need to. They are likely to be.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. You're branching now.
And it can change at any moment.
All right, Jeff is here to kind of get us prepped for session. It starts in a few weeks. You probably know how many days, and I know you.
You see, we have 21 days. Yep.
So just so all of you know how we kind of function in teaching and learning during session, we are a little more on the clock for more hours of the day. So you might get harassed at 8 o'clock at night for a response. It is kind of an intense 6 weeks, so just know to be checking your emails and phone more often during the session, because when we get requests, some of them are very time sensitive and we have a short amount of time to turn them around. So if we want to make sure they're accurate or that you get to get the feedback you want on a bill, there are bills that we know about and bills that we won't know about that you'll have to give responses to. So I know we were over the Christmas break, there's one on comprehensive sex education that nobody seems to know anything about. So we're like, well, good to know this might be coming. But that's just kind of how session works. So just be aware we will likely connect with you for various things that we know and don't know about. We're still working, I have a couple meetings with legislators this week on some bills that we'll be doing, but just know it's that time of year, and sometimes they consult with us early and sometimes they consult with us in the moment. So it's kind of just an on-demand as needed, so just be near your phones. I'm sorry, it is 6 weeks of being a little less present with your friends and family at times, but hopefully it won't be too cumbersome this year. So Jeff is going to take over and take us through. Do you want to click?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Hard to do it on top of
Keep
either
your
one.
style going.
How's everyone doing this morning?
First day back, and now we gotta talk legislature.
Welcome back from the holidays.
I think I'm gonna go on.
staff
I
meeting.
think I'm gonna take off.
How many of you is it the first day back from a while? Well done. I want to give you a props for taking a little time for yourself. Good job.
And you came back to talk about politics out the gate. So that's always fun. So for those who don't know me, I'm Jeff Van Holt, and I'm the policy advisor for the board. I report directly to Angie Stallings, and Angie and I get to begin singing the song. It's the most wonderful time of the year because we are just diving right into what I refer to as political football season. We've got our fantasy football league going, me and Angie. We'll see if we survive by the end. Most of you had a version of this training like, when did we do that? April, May, September? Not too long.
I say the fall.
I did not change the theme of my training, so if you recall the theme, it stays the same. I will go through everything, so it will be complete review if you attended a few months ago. And then we will dive a little bit more heavily into the legislative website so that you can kind of see how you can go in live in real time and kind of track the session and navigate it. It's really a great website. But just as a reminder, the device is ready, is it?
Touch your screen first. It needs a little second. Okay, it should work.
Let us begin with Regina. Who remembers Regina from last time? Do we have anyone in here who is now not familiar with Regina George at all?
I encourage them to watch the movie over the break. Nate obviously nailed that.
Nate. You need to stop skiing and rock climbing and take some time to watch Mean Girls. So as we recall, Regina George in the movie Mean Girls, she is everything that a mean girl is and should be. And you will have Regina George moments for any bill during the session. So that's why I always begin by introducing Regina George, because in a sense she lives in the legislative session and can come at any point, and you don't know when or what or how. So I will remind you all of the process, and where Regina might show up in any moment of that process, and then we'll dive into the website.
She's running for board, isn't she?
What's that?
She's running for board, isn't she?
Yes, of course. Okay, this is not, I will use it.
Not work.
So I always go with the fake bill, although at this point, just so you are aware, we have almost 150 House bills that have been released publicly. And, thank you. And about 50 Senate bills, so we could actually pick a real bill to track right now. Some of our bills are numbered, that we got through in committee. But for the sake of this, and for the sake of my outfit, we will begin with Senate Bill 101, the Division of Public Affairs, where we are going to create a division to tell the public they must wear pink on Wednesdays. It is Monday, but whatever. The training is happening on a Monday, so I had to wear pink today. So it's assuming, and for those who have not seen the movie, it's a reference to the movie. To sit at the Mean Girls table, you have to wear pink on Wednesdays, or you cannot sit with them and have lunch with them. A concept that plays out almost parallel identically during the session, depending on who your friends are. So we're going to assume we're going to create this bill, create a division that requires people to wear pink on Wednesdays. So what happens with this bill? Well, the lay of the land in the Utah State Legislature, we're going to start on the opposite end. It's a bicameral legislature, meaning they have two bodies, a House and a Senate. Does anyone remember, and Robert Austin's not allowed to answer this, but I'm sure he knows, which state does not have a bicameral legislature? They just have one body.
New Mexico.
No. Not a bad guess.
Nebraska.
Nebraska, yes.
Wow,
Karen.
Karen.
It has nothing to do with who she's
You need
sitting
to
by.
use your information.
Through osmosis.
Karen.
So Nebraska actually, this is a fun fact, one body, they call themselves the Supreme Body, they're the Supremes.
Oh, wow.
And they are nonpartisan. They actually are elected,
Wow.
they don't have parties in Nebraska for their state legislature. And
Y'all know they'd be Republican.
been happening since the 30s, an interesting experiment. I mean, Nebraska is still operating as far as we know, so it works. But we are not Nebraska. We are like everyone else and the federal government. We have two bodies, so a bill has to go through the House and the Senate. So what does that mean for your bill? Just as a reminder, 2019, there were over 1,600 bills that went through the process, and 574 of them passed. And that was a record-breaking year. So I'm not super great at math, but that looks like 30-something-ish percentage. Mathematicians in here can like quickly calculate that in your head. Not a very high survival rate for your bill. On top of that, what makes it hard is it's a 45 calendar day session, including weekends and holidays. So you only actually have 32 to 33 actual working days where you can move your bill along in the process. Otherwise, backdoor dealing happening on the weekends and the holidays. Hopefully you're like calling senators and representatives to try and convince them not to kill your bill or to support it or whatever the case may be, but that's all happening on the side, but counts as a legislative day during the session. We have one of the shortest sessions in the nation, not the shortest, but one of, and we're about half the length of Kim Kardashian's marriage to that basketball player whose name I forget. But so we're much shorter than that marriage. And then just to give you an idea of what's happening, not in the 45 days, but the others, the 320 some odd days, there is an interim session always going where the legislature meets once a month. They don't actually meet and have floor time and pass bills like they would during the session. They have interim committees made of senators and representatives, so I call them mixed committees because they have people from both bodies, and they're divided by subject matter. So you have like tax and revenue, You have education, you have economic development, health, and human services, and so on. And typically during the interim, they're studying the political issues of that topic area and making decisions on what they're going to do in the session based on what they're studying during the interim. So as Jennifer is very aware, during the interim, you guys can get called up and present on any given topic, so you can kind of give the legislators things to consider when they hit this mad dash we call the legislative session. We have several things that are happening. Shannon and Sarah did a phenomenal job presenting to the legislature in September, somewhere there. It all blurs. They did a great job presenting. You can get asked any question at any time while you're presenting. But that's what's happening. They meet once a month, and they're pretty much kind of laying out their game plan. That's where we're at. So we want everyone to wear pink on Wednesdays. So what happens next? Now that we understand the basic rules here, we dive into the path of the bill. Hopefully you remember this from last time. It's the one thing I hope you remember no matter what. The 5 steps to becoming a bill. You'll notice the little watermark behind here should drop warm fuzzies and take you back to a time when PB&J was like the big concern, crust or no crust. Yes?
And we should have a 5-second moment of silence for the singer of I'm Just a Bill, who just passed away.
I sing that song every morning. It's me going. So, with that, so what is Utah's Schoolhouse Rock? It's a 5-step process. Committee floor, governor. Does this sound familiar? Committee floor, governor. So you have to do the committee and floor in one body, and then you gotta do the committee and floor of the other body, and then the governor has to agree to it as well. If you make those 5 major hurdles, congratulations, your bill is now a law, and will be a law for at least 12 months until the legislature decides to take the law they created and change it, which they can do every year. So even if you feel like, oh, I've got a program, you got created 25 years ago, legislature's never touched me, you're just lucky. They could at any moment come in and be like, never mind. And you may be involved in that process and you may not, depending on if it's a hostile takeover or they like what you're doing. So this is the big thing I want you to walk away with, if this is new to you. And Regina George can show up at any point in this 5-step plan to becoming a law.
And where do staff potentially have input?
Thank you. So staff will have the biggest ability for input on the committees. Committee is where public comment happens. Obviously, you can't go down to the floor and say, as you know, Citizen Jeff Van Holten, I would like to take the mic and take some time. The floor debates are just that. They're for the representatives or the senators to debate a bill amongst each other. They can bring up comments that were made in the committee, but this is your moment in the committee. And your bill has to pass a small committee in comparison to the floor to continue on in the process. So this is a really good time to show up. You'll be asked to comment. Angie and myself and the superintendency will definitely be coordinating comments on several of the bills, making sure that you're there, or if you can't be there or would prefer not to be there, that you give us the talking points that you think would be really good to go on the record with. When you hear people say on the record, this is where the record is happening. So, and in a court of law, really interestingly, committee hearings and the things set in committee by legislators about the intent of a bill actually is used in court to interpret the law itself. When there's a debate about, did they mean pink when they said pink, or did they mean fuchsia, or did they mean magenta? Well, maybe somebody, you know, Senator Thompson here said, pink is baby pink, not pink pink, not hot pink, we want baby pink. Then if we were like in the court of law trying to figure out what to do, the judges could listen to the recording and be like, well, legislative intent's pretty clear, baby pink. So these are really important to get comments on the record. It's also really good to tee up with your legislators if it's a bill you're working with them on, to give the proper statements about what we mean. Because again, that's where you can point to and actually have legal authority and say, hey, the legislative intent was X. So this is your moment. We've gotten here, moment's kind of gone. We can maybe talk to the gov if we hate the bill and be like, kill it. But he is very, very reluctant to veto bills. Governor Herbert is. Governors of the past, less so. Some like to veto, some like to, give the middle finger, if you will, to the legislature. And the governor does have line item veto power for money. But he cannot line item veto a bill. He could not take out Wednesday in our bill and say pink is for Monday. He either has to say yes or no to the full bill. So, feeling good? Not super bored yet? Okay. Rules to keep in mind. So 45 days, but really 32 to 33 actual days. And you've got 5 major hurdles to clear with a 30-ish% chance of making it. How do you up your chances? Here's some ways to up your chances. The first thing, this really should be on the other slide, it's another rule that you have to keep in mind. Every bill has to be read with air quotes 3 times. And the House and the Senate in Utah have different interpretation of the word read. So in the House, when a bill gets introduced, they say, they'll open the floor every day and the Secretary of the House will start reading off like, House members, here's all of the new bills for the day. House Bill 1, House Bill 2 was just their little title. You haven't actually read the bill, you have no idea outside of what the title is, what the bill is. House says that's reading number 1. They say committee is reading number 2 and floor is reading number 3. The Senate does not count that little intro on the floor as first reading. They count the committee as the first reading, and then they actually debate every bill twice. They have a second reading vote and a third reading vote. As you're thinking through time, you have 75 people in the House, so lots of cooks in the kitchen that can take up a lot of time debating other bills. So that's a time suck. But in the Senate, although there's only 29 people, they have to vote twice on every single bill. So you have to kind of think through the calendar and how you're going to try and move things along. So there's 2 things you can do to make it faster. Committee bill status, so 320 days where not the session and they're meeting once a month. And they're looking at what do we want to do during the session, and we go up there and testify on X, Y, or Z. You can ask them to consider making an interim committee bill, basically saying, here's an idea for a bill, give us permission to write it, and by your last meeting, interim meeting, which is November of every year, if you vote by a majority here that you like the bill as written, we'll leave it as is, we won't change a period or a comma, and it will receive committee bill status. What does that mean? So in our 5-step process, you skip first committee. You go straight to the floor. So then you go floor, committee, floor, governor. Because technically they consider the interim process the first committee. So, I mean, you get a head start in the 5-step process. It's very helpful. And there's a feeling amongst the legislature that if you have committee bill status, your bill has been vetted, it's trusted, did your homework, you spent a lot of time on it, so they tend to be less scrutinizing of committee bills, a little more forgiving and saying, well, you guys have probably worked that out, so we'll just pass it along. So they do get a tendency to move faster because there's less controversy with having committee bill status. Priority bill status is similar. Everybody, if we continue in the Mean Girls theme of high school, everybody gets 3 invites to prom. If you are a member of the high school, meaning in this case a member of the legislature. So they each get to prioritize 3 bills. They could have 50 bills that they're running, but they get to say these are my top 3. If your bill gets priority status, when time starts to run short at the end of the session, the legislature basically they do a wiping of the calendar, which we'll talk in a minute, but they basically take all of the non-priority bills and they just set them aside and they only start focusing on the priority bills of everyone because you're out of time. So if we get to this other stack of non-priority bills, cool, but they want to make sure they're honoring every legislator's top priorities. So you want to make sure you get priority bill status. If you want priority bill status, you want to make sure that you know the dates for each invite to prom. 3 deadlines. 2 of them have passed. We have 1 left. So every legislator has already designated 2 priority bills by this point. January 30th is the final deadline for the last invite to prom. So if you have not been invited to prom yet, you really want to go. Now would be a really good time if you have bills that you're thinking about and you're not sure if they have priority status, to contact the legislators and ask that they make it their 3rd priority. And that way, if you're running low on time, you will actually live to see the end of the session, hopefully. Yes.
Does that include adjustments to current law?
It does. So if you're running a bill to adjust current law and you're not creating new law, same thing. And one thing I should give as a caveat, thank you, is this reminds me, there's something that I've noticed here that we tend to do, and I am guilty of falling into this trap. Your program was created by House Bill 25, 16 years ago. It is no longer House Bill 25. There is a House Bill 25 every year, and it is not your bill anymore, and your bill is not a bill, it's the law, because it made it through the 5-step process. So I've heard people say, oh, well, I don't want to open up my bill again. Like, well, bills don't even contain the full law. They just contain the parts that are being amended or changed. There are other parts that exist that could still impact the words on the page in your bill that didn't get put in the bill, but it's still the law. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm being circular, but. So once your bill passes, it gets a citation number. That's what you should refer to, or the program name. I would not continue to call it House Bill. We're really bad right now with the mental health grant. We always call it House Bill 373.
Last year, come on.
It was last year. But House Bill 373 rolls off the tongue a lot easier than qualified mental health grant. It's like, but really at the end of the day, there is no more House Bill 373. There was a House Bill 373 of the 2019 session that we care about. 373 from 2018 wasn't even an education bill, it was something else. But so just something to remember. So yes, all bills are either changing existing law or they're creating new law. Regina George moments. All right, we have our 5-step process. Do we remember that? Committee bill or committee floor, governor. Where does Regina show up? Where are the mean girl moments that are gonna tank your bill? Or where are the mean girl moments you wanna play to tank someone else's bill? Because that's also a game we have to play. These are some things to consider that you will run into. Either you wanna use them or you want to try and play against them. The first one is appropriations. So this whole training, I haven't even talked about money, and I really won't dive into money because that could be like a 5-hour presentation in and of itself. But suffice to say that the biggest things you need to know about money in the legislative session is we have a base budget, and then there's new money. The base budget gets passed every year, and it has to pass in the first 3 weeks of the session, because unlike the federal government, the state has a requirement that they have to have a baseline budget to stay open and operating if they can't agree on everything else. Essentially, I think everyone here is in the base budget at this point. If you're getting an ongoing appropriation and you don't have to go back year over year and ask for new money, the current amount you're getting every year is in the base budget and is typically guaranteed. Every year appropriation subcommittees meet and they'll pull out a handful of things from the base budget to do a deep dive during the interim. And that's just essentially an exercise that the legislature goes through, which I actually appreciate. Over the course of 5 years, their goal is to go through the entire budget piece by piece to decide whether or not those things are still good and how we're spending money on those things they're looking at makes sense. This year, I don't think any teaching and learning stuff got pulled out. The big one that got pulled out with youth in custody is being looked at, as well as, I forget the second one, but they got pulled out of the base budget and we have to go up and present and answer questions on why and how we're spending the money. How this becomes a Regina Georgia moment though, you have base budget, you're probably in it and that's great, but what if you want more money or you have a new program? You're gonna have to fight the fight. And I'll just leave it at that for now. Money is a big driving force in the legislative session, no doubt. But just know that spending money on something can be a Regina Georgia moment in and of itself. You have to make the case, you have to sell it, and you have to explain why the money is best spent on your thing versus the other thing, which can be really hard in education sometimes when what is the best interest of the child? Interest A, interest B? Is it professional development? Is it school breakfast? Are they suddenly, right? I mean, you never know what will end up competing with each other, and oftentimes what ends up happening is we'll have departments internally competing for, we've got 10 million, we're only gonna give you 10, so is it for this or is it for that? And we have to decide internally what we're gonna do. So that can be a moment.
And maybe in line with that, thinking about why not just put it in the WPU? You will get asked that many times on the Hill. Why make this a special program? Why not just, if it's so important, why aren't the LEAs just choosing to do it with the WPU? Have a talking point for that, because it comes up often. They really, the legislature would like to just give everything to the local control. And so to say, why are we carving out this money for this special program? And if it's that special, why aren't the LEAs already doing it, or that kind of thing? So just if you have a bill or one of yours comes up, or you get approached on a bill in the next few weeks, be ready for a talking point around that. It often comes as to why do we need this special carve out, rather than just putting the money in the WPU. That one I think has come up a number of times, especially in the last few years. And more about just WPUing.
Local control until school fees,
And
and
then, whoa, we must hold.
but that is probably one of the biggest things we get asked. Why not just put in the WPU? Why this special thing? Why the extra bureaucracy of going through the state agency? Thank you. Next four are really related to a bill, and these are Regina George moments that can happen. So remember, we have committee floor, governor. Governor, he's not even up here as a Regina George moment, but he can become Regina George himself. At any point, if he doesn't like your bill, you'll have pretty early signs from Tammy Pfeiffer and their team if they don't like your bill. And if you're getting those signs from the education advisors of the governor, like from Karen and Tammy essentially, you might want to work out what's going on with them first, because they will essentially recommend a veto if it's something they are very upset about. You never want to make enemies of the governor's team. You want to go as a united force. Going through the legislature's process in and of itself is its own issue, and you don't want to have to be fending off outside parties at the same time. So our bill to wear pink on Wednesdays, it needs to go to a committee first. The question is, which committee? It's a Senate bill, so we're gonna start in the Senate side, by the way. I get asked this every time I give this presentation. Difference between a Senate bill and a House bill is where it started. The chief sponsor. If the chief sponsor is a senator, it's a Senate bill, and it will start Senate committee, Senate floor, and then move to the House. If it's a representative, it's a House bill, and we'll start in the House and move to the Senate. Both are the same in terms of their bills trying to become the law. One is not better than the other. Timing wise, I like to get my bills through the House first. 75 people debating your bill on the floor can take a long time, and they all like to get their soundbite in about any controversial issue. So I have had it in the session where it's the last night. You are 2 bills away from being debated. It's the final vote. It's all you need. You've gone through this whole process. You're on your final vote in the House, but it's a controversial bill right in front of yours, and they all have to take their 10 minutes to speak on why they hate it and why they're voting no. And then all of a sudden, clock strikes midnight, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't get to your bill." And you go fast. So you want to make sure you're getting through. I like to get through the House first because the Senate is faster, even though they debate every bill twice. 29 people can come to a consensus much faster than 75. I digress. Rules Committee. So committee process. We have these two moments where we get sent to a committee. So we want to wear pink on Wednesday or make everyone do it. Where do we send our bill? The Education Committee, Tax and Rev Committee, Economic Development, Human Health Services. How do we decide? Well, they have a committee for that. Of course they do. It's like they have an app for that. They have a committee for that. So the Rules Committee, the House has one, the Senate has one. And the chair is appointed by the leadership of both bodies. So the Speaker of the House picks the chair of the House, and the President of the Senate picks the chair of the Senate Rules Committee. Every bill gets sent to the Rules Committee first. So really, it's committee floor. You have to go to the Rules Committee first. And as the chair of the committee, you get to decide where a bill gets assigned and if a bill gets assigned. So this is where Regina George is alive and well, is in Rules Committee. And having the chairs of the Rules Committee your friend is wonderful. Having them be your foe is horrible. A very fun example of this happened in 2018 session. There was a bill to change the statue that we have in the US Capitol building. Every state gets 2, and their legislature gets to pick which 2 they send to Washington, D.C. So there's 100-ish statues, or actually a little more because of some territory. And right now, there's only 9 women. And the question has been rising up, well, do women create history too? Novel idea, yes, they do. So a lot of states are now deciding to send 1 man and 1 woman. And so there's a big turnover right now of states deciding which man to cut to replace. We went through that process in 2018. We wanted to, our 2 statues were Brigham Young and Philo T. Farnsworth, the inventor of the television, a fellow Utahn, although Idaho tries to claim him, because he was born in Idaho. But
Changed it.
everything that happened with TV happened right here in the Promised Land. We're gonna bring home Philo because you can't bring home Brigham. That's just not gonna fly in Utah. And who are we gonna replace him with? We're gonna replace him with Martha.
Hughes Cannon.
Thank you. Who was the first woman elected as a senator in a state legislature in the United States. Big suffragette, fighting for white women to get the vote at the time. And so we wanted to bring her in. Her statue is in the common ground between all the 4 buildings of the Capitol complex, where the fountain is. She's one of the 4 statues. The chair of the Rules Committee was Representative Mike Noel from Kanab. I've been in there for many, many years.
Listen to your voice messages.
Rural cowboy kind of person. He was writing a bill to change the Utah National Park Highway to the Donald J. Trump Highway. Regardless of how you feel about the current president, imagine there was a lot of controversy about changing the name of the highway to President Trump's name. And so there was a lot of people debating whether or not they wanted, a lot of legislators, they were like, I don't know if this is the hill I want to die on right now in the session in changing this highway name. And Mike Noel, he wanted it bad. And he knew there was a lot of love and excitement around this bill sending Martha to DC and bringing home Philo. So what did he do as the Rules Committee chair? He decided not to release the bill to send Martha. In exchange for, you will vote for my renaming of the highway bill, or I will not let Martha go to DC. So he held Martha hostage, and there was a lot of debate internally. There was even a Trib article that came out about it. The Rules Committee chair can have a lot of power and say, if they don't like you, or if they really just want to force you to do what they want to do on something completely unrelated. The ending of that story, he lost his debate. The leadership finally came to him and said, we will not be renaming a highway, we will be sending Martha, get in line. So Martha, that bill passed, Martha is going to DC. The designer of the statue actually was chosen in February of last year. And they're currently making the statue, and she will be swapped out, I believe, this year. Correct, in honor of the anniversary of women getting the vote. So Rules Committee, you want the chair to like you. And Mike Noel could have done something else too. He didn't have to hold hostage the bill. He could have looked at all of the committees and said, oh, interesting, the Revenue and Taxation Committee has all my friends, and they will do what I ask. Does the statue about Martha have anything to do with taxes? Kind of, but not really. But he could send it to that committee with a little wink, wink, nod, nod, like kill the bill. We can do that as well. Our education bills may not get sent to the education standing committees of the House or the Senate, depending on this entire process. Rules committee is a big deal. You want these people to be your friends. So it gets out and gets sent to our 5-step process. We're in one of the standing committees now.
When does that happen?
Rules committee happens, so they introduce the bill. House Bill 1 has been read into the House. That's the first reading in the House, right? And
Then
it
it's
gets
sent
to
to,
Rules Committee.
Okay.
And the Rules Committee will meet every day, and they will vote on where they're sending all the bills, or if they're even sending any bills. And then it goes to the Standing Committee. So it's happening daily during the session. But if your bill hasn't been assigned to a Standing Committee, it is hanging out in Rules, and you might want to start bugging the chair of the Rules Committee saying, hey, my bill, I really need it to get moving. Because time is of the essence. We don't have a lot of time. So let's say it gets out, the bill with Martha, our bill to like wear pink on Wednesday goes to our committee before the floor. So those are called standing committees, by the way. You have a House and a Senate standing committee for each subject area. So there's a House Education and a Senate Education standing committee. Well, guess what? The chair of that committee can do the same thing. They can hold your bill. They don't have to assign it to an agenda. They can just hold it on forever and in this limbo land and kill it. They can send it back to the Rules Committee and be like, oh, I don't think we should have this bill. And the Rules Committee can reassign it to a different committee. Or they can actually put it on an agenda and get it to a vote for the committee. And this is your moment, as we talked about earlier, where you can do public comment. You can rally the troops, if you will. If that's what we have decided internally we would like to have happen, is like, Jody, call all the health specialists and bring them on the Hill for this. Superintendency is very intentional about when they want the troops rallied and when they don't. We're also very aware that members of the public get to do as they will. So just know that if we do an official rally cry, you will be told. Otherwise, allow the troops to rally themselves. And who shows up and comments, so be it. So you have to pass by a simple majority vote of the quorum present. Here's the other issue. The standing committee is meeting when all the other standing committees are meeting. And you need the sponsor of your bill present to present, which means the sponsor of your bill is not attending the standing committee that they sit on. Which also means the standing committee that you're presenting toward will not have everyone present. There will be times where they're off presenting their bills. Is that a problem? Yes. You want to always count your noses. You want to know where the committee members stand on your issue. A great example of this is House Bill 120 from last year. Remember our school safety bill that we ran? And it got amended 6 different times. Well, the only reason why the 6th substitute of that bill even passed, the 5th substitute died in committee. Why? Because we had a bunch of, it was like 5 o'clock at night. We had a bunch of legislative, late in the session, several committee members gone. Unfortunately, committee members who liked the bill and told us they support it, they're presenting elsewhere. And the people who were left happened to be everyone that hates it, and then half hated it and half liked it, and one I didn't know. I was like, crap, I don't know. A tie vote is a fail. You have to have a majority. Ties does not work here. So I'm counting noses and I'm like, this person I don't know is probably a no. So this is gonna make this a tied vote. So I texted one of the senators, who may or may not have been a former board member, and said, hey, you happen to have a fellow friend on this committee, like this particular person that's near, and you can get them in right now? And she said yes. It was Senator Reedy, I'll own that. She's like, let me text Senator Davis, because I was like, Davis likes this bill. She's texting him, and I'm like, where is he? Where is he? She's like, I don't know. And we're just drawing out the public comment. Just like, Angie, go long. Like, keep talking, filibuster. And unfortunately, last year there was a huge impasse on passing the budget because we were debating the tax overhaul, which didn't happen in that session. And Senator Davis was on the Executive Appropriations Committee, so he was in a meeting debating money. and never made it. So we had a tied vote and the bill died. We were able to convince the chairs to let us rework the bill and bring back a version that they thought could pass. And that's the version we ended up getting, very stripped down from the original. Version 5 was great. And I will tell you this, ever since version 6 has passed the last year, everyone's like, oh, why don't we have something like this in law? Why don't we do something like this? And I'm like, version 5 was that. But unfortunately, making sure the room is filled with the right people also matters. We had a bill that suffered because of that very issue. Assuming you make it past that point, we're hopeful, right? Yes.
Sorry, this is going back a little bit, Jermaine. Circumstances you were just talking about. Does Rules Committee also have the power to kind of constrain the conditions of the debate as it goes to debate or on the floor? In the federal government, like the Rules Committee sets the conditions by which debates happen within, right? Is there a parallel like experience at the state level?
I would say an informal parallel. The Rules Committee chair can definitely give nods or hints as to how they would like things to go. You'll see a lot of what you're talking about happen more in the standing committee with the chairs of the standing committee. They usually kind of sit down, they actually will have group text and emails with each other, the other committee members, and the chair will basically say like, hey, I know Senator Thronson, you want your bill to come to our committee because it's a friendly committee. Well, then I'm gonna need you to vote yes on this bill. I know you're shaky on it, but your yes will let me allow your bill to come to our committee and be on an agenda and yes on it. So they definitely do that behind the scene. Less so on the rules committee. I mean, the goal is just to get out of rules and assign to a standing committee because they can't actually kill a bill. But I mean, in the Mike Noel example, he tried. He definitely tried to give a nod of you will all vote for my Donald J. Trump highway bill, or mark that doesn't go.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
And so does Rules also get to choose what amendments to a bill? So all amendments, how are those amendments chosen? Because again, in the federal government, Rules chooses, like everyone submits amendments and then Rules gets to say, I like yours, I don't like yours.
Great question. So Regina George moment that I haven't really brought up yet is we're assuming that the bill as written is what's going to keep moving. No, not necessarily. The Rules Committee can definitely, again, the chairs and whatnot and the members of the committee can say, we're gonna give this bill to the Education Committee, but pink needs to be blue, just to be clear. But that's just a suggestion behind the scenes. That is not a formal vote. All amendments have to happen here in the Standing Committee. And those suggestions can also happen from the chair of the Standing Committee. Like, yes, we like this bill, but we hate this one particular line. They can vote to amend it and pass it out as amended. So you also have to play defense on when you actually get there to make sure that they keep it the way that it is. Or be ready for the concessions you're willing to make. You have to know every bill and the 10 versions you could live with as well when you're working your bill through the whole process. But no, as far as I know, like the Rules Committee doesn't give like a formal, we vote that this must change as we send it on. It would all just be behind the scenes like, hey, by the way. But the Standing Committee, it's a little different because they have to make the amendments formally there in a public setting. And that happens a lot too. Members of the public will come and if they've rallied the troops, like we hate pink, it needs to be baby blue. The committee can be like, great, well, we're gonna change the bills now blue on Wednesdays for everybody. And you have to decide whether or not you can live with that. Well, you just have to decide to live with that because it's moving, whether you want it to or not. And then you can talk to the sponsor and say, hey, this is not cool, walk away, kill the bill, and they can do that. We actually saw that last year with the conversion therapy bill, if any of you recall that. There was a bill by Representative Hall to ban conversion therapy as a practice. The bill didn't die, but it got heavily amended to the point that the representative felt there was a big loophole that would actually allow it in a lot of certain circumstances. And so he killed his own bill. He's like, I can't stand by this, I'm going to pull the bill, pull my support. And he did it late in the session too. He held the bill because he didn't want that version to get picked up by someone else. So he ran the clock and then pulled it. Floor debates. Very quickly, because I want to show you guys the legislative website. So once you've passed committee, then the secretary of the rules committee get assigned to standing committees. And then if they pass the standing committee, they also read every morning, yesterday, in all the standing committees, the following bills. House Bill 1, House Bill 2, House Bill 3. Mesmerizing. So then they just get stuck on what's called the reading calendar. And really, bills are just loaded on the reading calendar in the order that they were read by the secretary. And the secretary reads the same committees in the same order every day. They start with like rev and tax, then they read what passed this. So you hope your committee is like one of the first ones read, because that's where it's gonna end up every time. And then it just ends up on a list, and the floor debates starting at the top of the list, and they just, during their floor time, they just move one by one. There are certain things you can do to move your bill up. You can get a time certain, just kind of like the agenda for the board. If you are running a bill on something that you want people to be present for in the galleries when the vote happens, they can try and schedule a time certain. That's always a nice trick to guarantee, especially late in the session. Like, oh, but the children who worked on this bill are going to be here on a school field trip the second to last day of the session at 11 a.m. If you could just have the vote then so they could see democracy happening. And they will do it, and your bill kind of butts in line. So the Regina George moment of the reading calendar is a motion to wait. Remember priority bills, re-invites to prom. So at some point toward the end of the session, we're only going to vote on the 3 invites to prom because we're out of time. So they will stand up at some point in the final week of the session, and someone will say, I move to wipe the calendar. And that is the moment where you're like the second bill, you're like, today's the day they're gonna debate my bill, and then they start the floor time and they delete everything. And then the motion will continue, and I move to put the following bills in the following order on the reading calendar instead, which has been prefixed by leadership. And surprise, surprise, leadership's priority bills always end up at the top of the list first, then everyone else's. So you can actually get a sense of how liked or unliked your bill sponsor is based on where their bill ends up on that new list. But the motion to wipe is a Regina George moment you can do nothing about. Why you really want to run that clock and try and beat it as much as you can. Then of course, the obvious Regina George moment, everyone else who hates your bill. They can tank it at any time. They can text their legislator, they can show up at public comment, and they can encourage legislators to use any of these other tools to kill your bill, amend your bill. Don't forget, your bill can be amended on the floor as well, and they can pass it out as amended, which can be good or bad depending on where the clock is at.
About circling,
What's that?
circling when they circle the bill.
Yeah,
I hate the circling.
circling is the pause button. So when it's like your bill's turn on the reading calendar, it's time to debate it on the floor, and your sponsor stands up, I move to circle the bill. No. Because it's the pause button. It's like, great, cool, move to the next bill. Your bill holds its place in line at the top, and they can stand and move to uncircle the bill at any point, and then it's your turn. Oftentimes your bill gets circled when people are not agreeing on the language, and there's just like, I'll vote yes, but you know, not baby pink. It's gotta be fuchsia. And so now you're having these backdoor conversations about a detail within the bill. And once you come to an agreement, they'll uncircle, they'll make their amendment, and you vote on the bill as amended. How are we doing? Are we like glazing over, tuning out? Are we okay? I could tell fun stories, running a little low on time, but yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there circumstances in which individual legislators can put their thumb on the bill?
Can do
State
what?
government? Just like, in the federal government, senators can just be like, I don't want. That is not true.
If you're a chair of the standing committee and you lead your committee, sure,
Yeah, right.
but you can't stand up and just a little bit different that way. There are less rules here than the federal government. I'll let you all ponder whether or not that's good or bad. This is butter or carb. So now we're gonna quickly get into statutory interpretation, hit the website, and then I will let you guys get on with far more exciting things. Just based on the first link that I clicked when I Googled this question, butter contains 0.1 grams of carbohydrates. So my question for you to ponder is, does that make butter a carb? The article did say that's a trace amount that's considered by science to be like almost non-existent. So is butter a carb? I guess it depends on how you feel about this 0.1 grams. Quickly how to read a bill, and then I'll exit out of this and we'll dive into the website. Bills gain and lose their teeth in definitions. We could say everyone's gonna wear pink on Wednesdays. And the reason why I bring this up is whenever people read a bill, they always skip the new definition. They're like, yeah, I know what pink means. Do you? Because oftentimes they will say pink means baby pink, pink means fuchsia. So like the details are in the definitions. The Oxford or Merriam-Webster definition of the word you think you know in plain English, 50-50 shot, whether or not that's what you actually mean by that word. So read every definition because that matters more than anything else. May versus shall. May is permissive, shall is required. So when you're reading a bill, if it says an LEA may do X, Y, or Z, they don't have to. If it says shall, they have no choice. If it says may not, anything in the negative is just a prohibition. May not, shall not, must not is just a no. But if it's affirmative, may is permissive, shall is required. It reads in outline form. So I've had people pull up this one little line in a bill and be like, but it says this. It's like, yes, but that is part A of 1, and 1 says this. You gotta read it in its full context. 1A. So it goes 1A and then Romanettes and then capital letters. So read it in outline format. It's hit or miss if the formatting has the indents that are very helpful. Oftentimes they justify everything on the margin and formatting, which makes it very difficult. So just remember the formatting starts with a number, lowercase letter, Romanettes, capital letters, in that order. Code citations, I won't dive into this, but know your code citations. We're 53 E, G, and F. And then it would be dash.
That's what you talk about instead of bill number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Say DTL or say 53 F dash what, whatever it is. The dash is separating the title, the chapter, and the part. Think state, county, city, title, chapter, part. So 53E is everyone, state level things. 53F is finance. 53G ground level is LEA regulations. So for example, Jody, because I know yours well.
53G-10402.
Jody does?
And 403, 404, 405, and 406.
Yes. Snaps Jody. So 53G ground level, 53G10, chapter 10 is curriculum, and the 400 is health. So you can kind of figure out just by the citation what we're talking about. And then underline versus strike through. Underline, we're adding new language to the law. Strike through, we're deleting existing language. This is very important to reading a bill. If there is not an underline and not a strike through, it is just the current law. Because they can't just put words with underlines and strike throughs and not put the rest of the sentence. So you actually know what you're reading. So if there's neither, it's the existing law, and then those two are what they're changing. I'm gonna dive out because the rest of this is about stuff that is old. Quickly dive into the website. And all of you that have laptops, it's a great time to play along. le.utah.gov, bookmark it. I've had people come to meetings recently actually with printed out copies of their bill from 1987. They're like, here's where my program was created and here's what the law says. I was like, that's what the law said in 1987. It could have changed 20 times over. And I'm like, oh, no. My program hasn't changed. I'm like, they may not have written a bill that said your program's name amendments. They could have written a bill about something unrelated and touched your law in that bill, which is why we have to read every bill to make sure it's not impacting any part of our code. So always go to le.utah.gov, and if you go to code up here, you back off of Jody, you could go to wants to go to code. Code and Constitution, there we go. And you can go by title, chapter, section, and you can search your current law, not your old law. So Jody is title 53G-10, curriculum, and part 4 is health. And here's all of the health law. I like to click on the PDF and actually then have the full health law in front of me in PDF form. You get the indentations when you do the PDF, which is helpful. You see how that reads in outline format, 1A, B, 2? So all of this applies to 1, which is as used in this section. Here are all these wonderful definitions you should know.
And a great example of why the definition does not match what you would think it means, because that is not what refusal skills means in any other world.
Yes, the common definition is not what.
Sexual harassment?
So that's just something for your, looking at your existing code, but I just want to show you how to track the session. First tool, calendar. This is the most important tool. Notice on January 15th, before the session, we have the Administrative Rules Review Committee, I rolled my eyes, and the Legislative Process Committee. These are in blue right now on the calendar, meaning they're the future. There's a, over here you can't see it, but there's a color code. If this was gray, it would be the past. You'll already know if it's the past or the future because I assume you know how to read a calendar. But just in case you're wondering, if it is green, it is happening right at that moment. And there will be, right here, this little location button will move over, or this calendar button will turn into a play button.
Oh, so you can watch
And you can play and listen. Committees, so remember our 5-step process. Committees are audio only. Floor is video. So you can actually watch the floor debate. Highly encouraged, like anytime you're tracking a bill and it hits committee especially, and you know people are on the Hill, you just want to be informed about what's happening with the bill, hit the little play button wherever you are, on your phone here, and you can listen live streaming of the audio. Very helpful. And then you get to hear the whole process being debated out. If you want to know a little bit more about what's happening on the agenda, this little piece of paper, you can click on that. That's the agenda. And the agendas during the session are hyperlinked to the bills. So once they say, here's what we're debating, and Administrative Rules Review Committee does not get bills during the session. They only meet during the interim to talk about the rules that we have written and whether or not they like them. A whole other story. But the calendar is really where I go to get live real-time action when I'm not present. Highly recommend it, very easy to follow. The next is this big resource tab. You will find that this is a very intuitive website, super easy to navigate. The resources tab, I click on that, and over here on the left-hand side, you'll see 2020 general session. We've got the dates of the session already here. Significant dates, because they've got deadlines like when's the third invite to prom. You can look it up by clicking on that link. Bill requests, if you want to know every bill that Senator Andreg has created, I think he's the one that has the most right now, you could click on this and select the session you'd want 2020. You could also look at past sessions too, and look at everything he's requested, or that he's writing or working on. The big thing I use in this resource page is I like new bills. So you click on that, you'll notice the date at the top, and they always have the last 5 to 6 days. These are when bills get released to the public. This is your first chance publicly to read bills. There's another way that we won't dive into today with fiscal notes where we get bills ahead of time. But I check this every day because I want to see what bills are coming out, and then you can click on any of the given bills. So House Bill 99, I would assume, Jennifer, is going to be very important for you. Enhanced kindergarten amendments. The bill that we've actually been working on with Representative Snow. So now I've opened the bill. How are we feeling so far? It's fairly intuitive, but I want to make sure I'm not leaving anyone in the dust. Calendar makes sense. The blocks, clicking on, okay. So then if you get into a bill, which by the way, if you wanted to go back to the main page, you already know your bill number, you can always just, this is like, consider this big search bar in the center of the homepage. This is the Google of the website. You want to find out a law that says the word pink. You want to find a law, like a current bill. So we know House Bill 99 is one we're actually going to be tracking. So I type in HB 99. And a whole list of things will show up. This is all categories you can filter. Obviously, we know we're looking for bills, so we don't need everything else that says HB 99 in it. Just Make sure you're looking right here. This will tell you the year, the session you're at. You don't want to look at House Bill 99 from 2017. We're not tracking that one right now. That happened. So get the 2020 and you can get to the bill that way as well. Yes.
Question, if there's a blank floor sponsor, does the bill sponsor automatically become the floor sponsor, or is that someone different?
So this is their way of saying House and Senate sponsor. So the bill sponsor, the chief sponsor of the bill, the person whose idea this is Representative Snow, which we approached him actually and said, will you run this bill for us? Yes. So because he's a representative, it's a House bill. We'll start in the House. And then we will need a senator to speak to it on the Senate floor because Representative Snow will be in the House when it hits the Senate floor. So the floor sponsor in this is the Senate sponsor. It's the other body's sponsor who will speak to the bill. So because every bill has to go through both bodies, so every bill will get 2 people championing it through the process. But this is really Rep. Snow's bill. He will ask someone in the Senate to run it with him. And they'll get a little 1-pager that has all the little like talking points, and they'll stand up and be like, House Bill 99 does the following things. Don't ask me questions because it's not really my bill. So, but yes. And sometimes they're very knowledgeable about the bill because they were part of it with the representatives. Sometimes they're just reading it and they're like, I don't know, to any question. Depends. Yes.
I was just gonna say, I just found it, or I would have mentioned earlier, on the calendar, if you click through the actual calendar on the top by where it says like January or something, it has a weekly schedule, and that updates a lot quicker than their fancy calendar does. So Mark Peterson always sends out these, like, this is when the Senate Ed Interim is meeting, and I'm like, where are you seeing this? This isn't on the website, but in the weekly calendar, which is just like a Word doc they put up, that's a lot quicker than the actual calendar. So if you click on like January 2020, right there, and then up on the gray, it'll say significant session dates, and then the weekly schedule. The weekly schedule, right now it's showing 2019, but it updates a lot more quickly and gives you more of a heads up once the session starts.
On each week. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
This website, just so you guys know, again, is very intuitive and easy to like play with. I would highly recommend, if you're going to be a part of the session, you spend time with le.utah.gov. Very quickly, just looking at this bill, I want to highlight for you mid-process what's happening, or it's July and we want to know what happened. We have, where's the bill at? This is currently in yellow, bill text. So what you're going to see is like what we're actually doing in this bill. Notice, let's find something. Change. So here's a good example. So this is all the current law, right? Nothing's underlined, nothing's struck through. This is the current law. And we're going to add a new section 5 to this part of the law that says all of these new things in underline. So you always want to read that and make sure you are happy with how it reads. And as you read it, always ask yourself, are any of these terms defined? Because the word that you may think means something in plain English may not be the plain English meaning in this case. So always check definitions. Otherwise, you may be thinking you're saying yes to one thing and you're getting another. It happens every year. Every year there's a definition missed and a bill passes and you're like, crap. We wanted baby pink, we didn't want fuchsia. So you just have to kind of live with that and change it in the next session. But so in a sense, reading a bill shouldn't be too intimidating. I don't want any of you to feel like it's impossible. Reading the sentences, and then you can see the state board shall. So we, USBE, are now going to have to do these following things. And we decide whether or not we like it and therefore support the bill. That's the bill text. If you want to just know what's going on with the bill, you can click on status and it will tell you where it's at and what's going on. And as this goes in time, you can even see the votes, who voted yes and no. You can click on that and it will actually tell you which legislator voted which way. You missed the debate. Surprise, surprise, you have a day job. You went to meetings instead. What happened in committee? What happened on the floor? You can click the hearings and debates and all the recordings will be right here. And you can go back and listen at your leisure as many times as you would like. The beauty about the audio and the video is it's not like the 2-hour video of the floor debate and you've got to find it. They bookmark it, so it'll take you straight to when your bill starts. Saves you time. The website is your friend. I want you all to use it. Last but not least, you'll notice up here at the very top right-hand corner, there's a login button. You can create a profile, and you would want to do that because Jennifer's already got out of hers. I got kicked out because I forgot my password, so I have to like go through a process I didn't have time to do today. But here, this button actually will turn yellow. It'll be a yellow box and it'll say track this bill. You can click on that once you're logged in, and it will send you live email updates on everything that's happening with the bill. So it's assigned to the Rules Committee. You'll get an email, your bill, HB 99, has been assigned to the Rules Committee. Rules Committee gives it to Education. HB 99 has been assigned to Education. They put it on an agenda. HB 99 will be heard tomorrow in the Education House Standing Committee. So it will update you. Or you can also just go to your tracking page and see where every bill you're tracking is at. So knowing the bill number, create a profile, and then you can hit the tracking page button, and that way you can track all of your legislation. Pretty slick website. Any questions, thoughts, feelings? Super excited. Ready to like dive in head first. See another like Donald J. Trump highway versus Martha Hughes Cannon like fight on the floor. I live for those moments. They're really fun to watch, especially when they're not your bills, they're someone else's bills, and you're just like, wow, that sucks for you, but that's really fun to watch all of this go on. Mean Girls is real, Regina George is real, but I think you can be Regina if you need to be, and you can fight Regina if you need to be as well. Questions?
Last one, promise. When do your nightly legislative summaries
Yeah,
start?
word. Yeah.
What's that?
When do your nightly legislative summaries start? Your summaries, the summaries that you send out.
Oh, yes,
Your
the last and
fundamental.
final thing. If I do nightly updates, sorry, I don't know why my ears are plugged today. I get a little pithy and sarcastic in those because it's like 9 o'clock at night and I've had to deal with whatever Regina George moment of the moment. If you want to be on my nightly update, I just kind of recap what happened. I try and keep it entertaining. I succeed sometimes, I don't others. But the point of it is to have information like, here's where the main bills we're tracking are, and if your bill is not in my email, you should email me and be like, hey, where's HB 99? Like, not in your email. And I'll add it in, but send me an email saying, put me on your nightly update list. And I will add you to the listserv. You will get an email every day during the session from me.
It's entertaining, even if you don't care about what's going on. He writes it in such a way that it's just, I look forward to it.
I channel the job that I always thought I would have and never went for. So yeah, if you want to get on that list, just send me an email. I'm gonna jump out so I can do this again for a different group. But if you have other questions, please email me. Okay. And I would be happy to answer any of those questions. If you want me to repeat any of this, I will. You can tell I geek out on it. So thank you all.
Jeff.
Yes.
Jeff, did you stop connecting?
Done. Jeff,
Jeff?
could you stop?
good.
Can
We're
you
good.
stop?
All right.
We're good. Thank you.
Okay, my clicker. All right. The other way that I track bills that you don't need a username and password is just using the app on your phone. It's called Bill Watch. I always forget passwords, and so it's like one less thing, and it just sends you a little alert, like an email, saying this change has occurred. I like it better than, I get enough emails, I don't need any more. But the text alerts work for me. And it's just called Bill Watch. So it's an easy one that updates just like the website. All right, thanks for coming down and going back up. I worked with Kathy to kind of organize Jeff, and we had landed on 9:30, but I think he got scheduled with another department today. So I apologize for those of you that got some extra steps up and down today. One of the things that we're going to talk about in the agenda overview and updates is the intention of coming to these meetings, and so I'm going to be a little more intentional about who comes when, so that you feel like your time is justified, and you also feel like you have other things to do that are more related to your job, that those will be the times that you won't need to be in this meeting. So we'll talk about that here in a second. So just keep the staff and specialist meetings on your calendar, but know some of that time may not actually be in the meeting. You might have work time, but don't depend on that work time either. So starting with just the agenda for today, it's changed a couple of times. This morning, in fact, but we're here. So if you want to just take a look, we're going to do our general updates. We'll have some finance discussion with Diane. She's got some clarification to help us with C7s versus stipends versus which strategy do I use to do this type of procurement. And then Cassidy will do a tech highlight. Then we'll move into, we did the Jeff part, we'll do competency-based education for those that make sense to stay for that conversation. And then at the end of the time, you'll either work on Standards Implementation Institute, the elementary team wanted some time together, or the Standards Revision Universal Support Work Group time. So we'll kind of review both of those and kind of move on with the day. Questions about the agenda?
Start recording. Start recording. Start recording.
All right, so staffing updates, I'm trying to think. I know we have our secondary ELA. Sarah, do you want to tell who's coming for that?
Yes, she's not coming until February 24th, so we have a little bit of time, but her name is Naomi Watkins. Robert, is Robert in the room? Yes. Yes, over there. Robert knows her very well, so if you want to learn a whole lot about Naomi, Robert's the go-to. But she came highly recommended actually from several people, so we're really excited for her to join. And she's working right now for, what is it called, something 2020?
Yeah, so she's the education director for Better Days 2020,
Thank you, Better
which is
Days
the
2020.
suffrage organization. So as they wrap up materials, she can then move into the work she's done. She's done great work in secondary literacy.
She's worked for the agency on projects for years, so it'll be a good transition for her. And then we hired Katie Dewey as the new educator effective specialist. She won't start until the 24th of February as well. So that person is coming, and Brenda switched roles. Where is Brenda? Thank you. Brenda is now assistant on the literacy team, took Brian's spot when Brian went to Leah's position. So I think those are all the updates I'm aware of, but things may have occurred while I was gone for 2 weeks. Anything else we need from the staffing updates perspective? Okay. If not, CD meeting tomorrow. Make sure someone from your team is attending if you guys have not already figured that out. We're not requiring everyone to come anymore, as you know, but just making sure there's a team member present. And then your UPM professional learning goal action plans that you started in specialist meeting, those of you that this is relevant to you, they're due Friday. Most of you turned them in already. I'll review them this week. If you already turned them in and get you some feedback next week. If you need it more urgently than that, let me know so I prioritize your particular goal action plan. I already reviewed, I think, one. All right, wondering out loud. This is the rumor mill or the questions you have that you want answered from your colleagues or myself. I'll give you a couple minutes just to chat with each other. If there's anything that you've heard rumblings or maybe Jeff kind of stirred up as you were thinking through that you want clarified, just give you a couple minutes to ponder with each other and then bring any further topics back to the big group. So go ahead and chat amongst yourselves.
There's a new bill. Financial information system.
Must be a good starting date. My friend and I'm think outside the organization.
Well, yeah, that'd be the board priority, but if you're gonna see the funding. If it's not. No, I did not say that.
Perfect.
Wondering out loud is done. Thank you very much. Well, thank you.
Oh, really? I haven't.
No, I just
No, no, fair enough.
They keep running into.
So your update on Midas.
I was like, I don't have money for that.
I know, that's the one I'm holding off, so.
We have to get on by tomorrow and I don't.
I don't know, there's like
Yes, you have to solve those things. I actually looked up, he's mentioned vendors, he has a bill that mentioned information systems of his. Which impacts the technical. I'll alert them now.
Yeah, you want it in front of you.
Don't know where they are.
Two. One. All right, any wonderings out loud for the sake of the bigger group? You got to wonder at your table, but anything that you need the group. Robert?
Yeah, I'm just, I seen an update at some point about the strategic plan and where I may or may not fit in that process, because if UPM goals are tied to participation in strategic plan, but I don't even know where or if I play a role in the strategic plan, it's hard or maybe really easy to reach that goal.
Okay, one thing I can do is share with you the list of who's on a team. I would say I still have one more team to meet with, so they reassigned the goals to either a director or a superintendent to be overseeing. So I'm overseeing early learning, Darren's overseeing the professional learning kind of category, Sarah Young's doing the personalized learning, and Safe and Healthy Schools is Leah. And so we're just overseeing the team work, and then they redid teams completely. So from a implementation kind of phase now, we were in the planning phase before, many of you were on a planning team. That does not mean that you're continuing on an implementation team. So one way I can answer this question is to send out who's on what teams. If you haven't been contacted at this point, it's likely you may not be on a team any longer, because most of the teams have reached out to their people to say, hey, you're on this team with us continuing, or you may have been switched teams and added to a different team. So likely, if you haven't heard anything, you may have been given the gift of not being on a strategic plan team. Some of you are on two, most of you are on at least one, but some of you are not on any longer. So given that in the strategic plan, just because you're not on a team doesn't mean you can't help to achieve the vision of the board. But what that looks like on how you achieve that may be different than what your initial plan was. So as you have your mid-year UPM goal meetings, if you're not having a meeting, that's fine too, not everyone does. You may want to look at revising your goal if you're not on a team, because the work that you have probably is changing. Great question, I can send out the list to kind of share out. If you haven't been contacted, I would guess most of you should know by now if you're still on you're moving into the implementation team. What the superintendency really shifted towards, which I think was smart, was to say, where is the work? And instead of engaging so many folks, which in the planning phase you want a really diverse perspective, you want different opinions coming in. But once we get to implementation, it really needs to go to the people that do that work on a daily basis. And so it's moving back into the houses of the people that's their daily work. So that may be why you've been shifted onto a particular team or taken off the team, because the teams are pretty broad representation for planning, but for implementation, they realize we really need to get to the people doing that job on a daily basis. And if we don't have anyone in the agency doing that job, we probably need to figure that out too. So hopefully you've encountered an email from the team lead, but if you haven't gotten that yet, I'll send it out later today so you can kind of just check and see, and then you'll know who your team leads are if you want to reach out and say, hey, looks like I'm on this team, when are we meeting? And hopefully your leads will have an idea of when that's happening. Does that help? Probably not the only person with that question, so other wonderings? Okay.
Our table passed a joint resolution stating with conviction that notability is far superior to OneNote.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
Say that again slowly.
No amendments.
That was a lot of syllables.
He doesn't like one note.
Oh, thank you for translating.
Oh, sorry.
We.
Resolution.
It's true, it was a table conversation.
Hey, thank you for the sharing moment. Doesn't fall in the wondering category. All right. Share out. Any share outs that we need to do before I talk about change?
That's the
Yes,
truth.
Joe.
It's a boy.
It's a boy.
And Nate, only one.
Just one.
Just one.
I think that's great.
The Nora Lee balloons confused him
Oh.
because there are more than one balloon.
Oh, I can see that. That's
A lot of balloons. That could have been really.
Well, at first there was only a couple balloons, and I'm like, and he's like, I thought it meant that you were having more than one. So I'm like, okay, we'll do another string of balloons, because then I don't think anyone's gonna think it's 6.
You were upset.
So are you now contracted to like have your own TLC show now?
No. Nope. Only there is one baby in there.
Podcast that birth.
Right. Any other big announcements? Okay. All right. Well, welcome back. Having been in this position for I think 9 months now, I've kind of just reflected on how it's been going and where it's headed, and I'm gonna give you the opportunity to give me a little more personal reflection anonymously here in a second. But before we do that, one of the things that I've kind of gotten feedback or just my own kind of personal reflection is these particular meetings, there are things that are really relevant to some and not relevant to others. And so in order to kind of accept that although it's great to see all of your faces at one time in one room, the value of that is not as great as it used to be. So back in the day, we needed this opportunity to kind of bring licensing and teaching and learning together as one unit. I don't think we have that same need or value at this time of like having to have everyone's faces in the same room for these meetings, given that we have a lot of quality work to get done, and just putting yourselves in a room doesn't necessarily make it feel like I understand what you do as a job, nor kind of show my personal appreciation for the work that you do. And so I would like to kind of propose a change, and I would love for feedback on that change as well, of how we will organize meetings such as this in the future. I'm gonna keep the times and all of that for now, but there will be an agenda will come out in advance, and it'll say who and what groups need to come to certain parts of the meeting. So timing will be really important that we keep to our times, because you might be the 9:25 group that comes down, and you might be the 10:30 group. And so it's gonna have a little impact on that part, but my reason for the change is to be more intentional and more respectful of your work, and to hopefully create more meaningful opportunities for when we need to be together, rather than just sitting here for the sake of being in the same room together. That's my current impression of why we do this. I love seeing all of your faces and seeing such a big group, but it doesn't have the value add I think we need at this point. And that value add is giving you the time to do your work. And if that doesn't make sense in this group setting, then why do we keep doing it? So it's just that personal reflection of just because it's been done like this the whole time I've been here, doesn't mean we need to continue that way. And so I would propose that we change to, I will kind of look at the agenda and say this makes sense for this group of people, and those will be the people expected to attend that part of the meeting. How does that sound initially to you? What's your initial kind of take? Some thumbs, I saw some head nods. Anyone have some apprehension or things that maybe to be thoughtful about? Because I sometimes move, I'm a quick action person, and so sometimes I don't always think as thoughtfully as I can about things, because I'm more of like, get it done. I'll deal with like the aftermath that maybe I didn't anticipate later. But my goal here is to respect your time and to value what you have to do, and to be more intentional about that in planning the agendas and when people come. So go ahead.
I would just, my only apprehension would be communication to everyone, and just making sure that it's effectively communicated as far as if you're going to
who comes when and all that, yes. Yeah. And so as we transition to this, I'll try and come up with like an agenda that's really clear. In your Google Drive today is how I'm kind of broken up the teams. So in the Adobe one, there's a T&L team chart, And we'll update this, we've had some staff changes, I changed what I could, and it's not beautiful everywhere. But if you find your name, it's a certain color now, and so it'll be color coded. So red, green, and blue team need to come to this section. You're a particular color. I didn't name you anything fun and exciting, it was just like, here's your color code, and at the bottom is what your team is called. So as I was thinking through, what do I need when we have these conversations, these are kind of the general categories. So standards team, if you are a content area specialist that has standards, you're on the standards team. Okay, so the agenda might say, I think it's the purple team, standards team will come, and I'll just keep the color coding, but I'll call it standards team, but it will be purple. If you see purple on the sheet, that means that's it's time for you to come on the agenda. Specialist team, so we have some unique program specialists. Sometimes it's appropriate for them to come, sometimes it's not, to a standards conversation, or maybe a different meeting we need just for them. Financial support team, people that do things in the finance space. And then you've got the quality instruction team. That's gonna be like the educator effectiveness, principals, all of that kind of side of the house. Licensing support team, so a lot of licensing doesn't do anything with finance, so there's like coming for the Diane part of the day doesn't have any value for them, so really trying to kind of think through who comes when. And then the research team, which we have our team of researchers, that they have particular work that maybe I might meet with just them on an agenda item rather than the whole group. So that is how it broke down. If I missed you, it was not intentional, so just know going through and trying to color code this thing was a pain. So if it's not looking quite right, or you're like, I'm not sure that's the group I should be in, feel free to reach out. I take feedback really well, so feel free to be like, hey, I'm not sure that's the right fit for me. And it's really, as we start moving with the agenda, I'll just kind of put on which team is expected to show during that part of the agenda, moving forward and being really thoughtful about who needs to be where when. Okay, so that is your kind of sheet. I'll leave it in the Google Drive so you'll always be able to refer. We'll make a prettier version someday, but like Christy and Nate shifted teams and I can't move their boxes. So there's some weird kind of look on there. There'll be like an empty box for jobs that aren't filled right now in some cases. So any questions on that?
Some people on more than one team.
I'll kind of just think about who's on the team to know if they kind of come. Generally, you just have one color at this point. Not saying you don't also help with some other area, but I've tried to put you in a particular team with knowing what kind of content we've had on the agenda so far to think it might work. Hopefully this will help give you some time back in your lives, but also help you to feel more valued. That I respect that some of the topics we have don't apply to you. All right, if you have thoughts, especially as we move through this kind of change on ways to communicate or to be more clear, or how do we keep the unification across the department, feel free to share. I'm happy to have that. As part of kind of it's January, it's a new year, I'd like to just take a moment of reflection. You've been dealing with me for 9 months now, and I appreciate that you handled it so well. But at some point, it's good to get feedback and to continue my refinement to better serve you. So in the PowerPoint, there is a feedback gathering link. I think it's in the drive, but let me check.
It is.
Oh, good. So, and it's anonymous, it doesn't track you, I can't tell who it is, you can be as vulgar as you want.
You don't wanna say that.
You don't wanna get I do. And I'll find it entertaining someday. So, if you will take a moment to click on this purple one and give some feedback, and there's just 3 main questions, if I remember right. I think it's 2 weeks ago, so it's been a little while. What do you like most about working in teaching and learning? What do you like least about working in teaching and learning? And then what would you change if you were the director? So if you were in my job, what would be something you would consider changing? And so just as we kind of move forward, part of my job is to serve you. How can that work better? And maybe as a department, what are some things? It's anonymous, I promise, I can't tell who it is, so feel free. If you want me to know who it is, you can put your name on it somewhere, but it's not required. It's really meant to be an anonymous opportunity to provide me with some critical reflection, both whether that's positive or negative or corrective or whatever you need to provide. I'm happy to have that and to be able to kind of look for opportunities to continue to create conditions that you enjoy coming to work. And so coming back January 6th, although you've been on vacation, some of you, that you're still kind of excited to come back. I woke up pretty excited to come back, which is always nice after a couple weeks off, to know that I still love what I do here. So, but I can always improve, and we can always improve as a group. So we'll just take a few minutes and have you do that. If you finish early, feel free to go off task for a moment, but just gonna give you an opportunity.
Yes.
And if you're one of those people that needs more personal reflection time, like you're like, I don't know, I tried to send the questions out in advance to give you some thinking time, because for me, if you ask for reflection off the cuff, it's not always the same quality. But if you want the day, I won't be reviewing this until probably tomorrow, so you're welcome to say I need a little more think time, then feel free to take that time. There's no harm in that. It's gonna allow you to provide that feedback. Not a shared resource form.
Showing spellings.
Just a quick check-in, if you'll hold up how many more minutes you might need from 0 to 5, just so I can kind of do a estimation. All right, average is 3, so we're gonna go 3 more minutes, and if you're not done, you can submit the form later, that's no worries. We are going to orchestrate our first organizational change for who needs to stay. So if you are nowhere related to finances, you don't have, never look at a PRF, never do a C7, never help with stipends, booking hotels, whatever that is, this is your opportunity to leave. And the rest of the day is more like content area specialist conversation. So if you're not a content area specialist or deal with finances, you are welcome to excuse yourself now. And I do want you to know you can always come to any part of the meeting. This is my intention. It's not that I don't want you, it's that I want to value you a little more explicitly by excusing those that don't need to be in person meetings. So if you are finished, great. If not, take your computer with you. If you have nothing to do with finances, you are welcome to head.
Is this specifically the finance people that are a special color?
No, so these are like, when finance needs to come, there'll be a special color, but you would stay for a finance conversation.
That's what I just got. I'm really happy to be here, just so you know.
So they're the finance team, so like if we're gonna have a conversation, we need finance for it, they'll be on the list. But like all of our assistants that help with budgets would stay, content people that spend money. If you have a budget, you spend money, you stay right now. If you have no money to deal with, you are the problem child. So that one is gonna be the
No, I'm the problem child.
I know, you're gonna
I'm just gonna hang it back up.
You're welcome to be Yeah, that's the whole point of this. That's,
I don't think anything.
you're okay about it. All right, we have our finance team. Welcome to you.
We are the team.
When are we bringing a new one?
We don't know.
Hopefully soon.
February 24th apparently is the day.
That's the start date for
No,
everyone. All right, so they've got some updates as well as some clarifying points around C7s and stipends and when to use one versus the other. We're running into conflicts of just using the appropriate one, and so just doing some clarification for prevention purposes. So I'll hand things up.
Okay, well, C7s, most of your office specialists know what those are, but if you have a project, you have to have a C7 for it. So if there's not a C7, then I don't know about your project. So we need to have a conversation about it, and make sure it was actually an approved project. And also, the carry forward as of December 31st, we haven't issued the C7s for that and split up where that's going. What is it, 50?
550,000, I think, or 140. And that's all on me. That's me. I'll get them out this week, maybe.
So we'll let you know.
Maybe
That's on
February
that.
24th. I kind of like that date.
And also, Jennifer had mentioned that the office specialists were going to be meeting with their program specialists about their budgets, and I'd like to be, if I'm your person, if I would like to be in on that so that we're all on the same page, so there's no surprises for any of us.
Kind of that mid-year check. If you're not gonna be spending some of your money, let me know. I have a dream that I would like to achieve that would benefit all of you ultimately. I would like to potentially do across the board raises if we end up not spending some of our money for all of you, but I don't have lots of free funds to make that happen. But sometimes we don't spend our money, and rather than having a bunch of carry forward, I'd like to bring you up to more higher wages if I can. So your specialists or your support staff are gonna meet with you in this month to go through your budget, see what you're gonna spend, what you're not gonna spend. Our dreams from April to January sometimes change, and if I know what's gonna be sitting there, I can use that more value to you than leaving it at the end of the year to carry forward, which is always great to have too, but at this point, the salaries in our LEAs are much more significant than our salaries here, so I'd like to see if I can close that gap a little. But I won't be able to know that if we don't have kind of knowing where we are in our budget. So we'll be doing some check-ins, and it sounds like Sherry, Diane, do you have the same kind of, do you wanna sit with them?
Sure.
Or?
Well, and hopefully we'll have a new person, and that will bring them up to speed too.
Which would be awesome.
Yeah.
Audrey?
Can you start over and back up from like that we don't even know what you're talking about?
No.
So
you weren't here, you
C7, like when does something start?
So a C7 is just like a project budget that allows you to do, so
And
yours
when
are
does
all
it start?
established.
What's the starting date?
Yours are already done.
Yeah, but what's the?
July 1st.
I know I was
July
given them
1st.
when I got here.
July 1st.
So we'll start budgeting, the retreat we have in April, we'll do a few things at it. One of them is budget, so I'm gonna develop an updated budget form that will hopefully make the transition easier for you to use in that April planning. The money actually becomes active July 1, but they have to set up budget codes and they go with a C7 versus a C7A, which is like personal contracts that you do with people when you're doing projects that you've been doing, like paying them to design a course. That's a C7A versus the C7 is like the ability to even do that project. So a lot of the C7s are done at this time of year. What they're talking about is our carry forward funds from last year that got approved in board. Those now need C7s, now allow you to spend that money. Some of you already have them because you needed them earlier. Some of them are still awaiting that C7 settled. So does that help, Audra? I know finances is super fun. I think it took me a couple years to figure it out to the space that I'm like, I go talk to Karen. Continue.
And if you have questions about your budget, we can pull reports or show you how to pull reports to see where you're at.
Started what, 6 months?
A lot of your support staff know how to do
Yeah.
that, so.
Any question about C7s? Okay. Also, we're gonna talk about the stipends versus service contracts. First of all, you need to know that if a person is on contract with an LEA, the LEA gets that money. It doesn't go directly to the participant. And then it's up to the LEA whether they actually pay that person or not. We don't have any control over that. So if people have questions about that.
So let me clarify that too. So what that means is if while they're working, that's the key word. So if you're bringing them in to do a meeting and they're on contract and being paid for that time, it goes to the LEA. So you cannot pay that person. If they're going home at night and writing curriculum for you and they're off the clock of their contract, that can be paid to the person. So that's kind of the differentiation of that. Oh, hands.
Ricky's got one too. Probably can't see him.
I can see his hand.
That needs to be clarified on our forms though, because there are times all it says is, are you on contract with your LEA? And our people don't even know what an LEA is, let alone what it means to be on contract, let alone, it needs to be clear.
Who's our people?
Well, the people that we're working
The
with.
educators, so.
When we give them all these forms
They're
and
on
say fill.
contract?
Well, I think the question doesn't clarify it. Is the activity you're doing for USBE part of your contract or in supplement to your contract?
I've had people that think that the contract they had to sign, whatever that's called, the C69 or 622. Anyway, whatever that form is called, they thought that was the contract that was being referred to. They're like, yes, I signed your contract. There's so much ambiguity in what's happening, and our teachers don't know any of it, let alone us.
I might suggest, as your support staff, when you guys send them out, in some kind of form, asking them, or you saying, this is gonna be done outside the day. So like when they come for training during this work day, they're on contract, they're being paid. We really can't pay them directly through the new policy. So that's really clear for me, right? Like as a specialist, like, oh, it's during the day. But if like standards implementation is too, many of you will be bringing them in to do some work, but there will be work being done outside. And the money we're giving is for the work being done outside the school day. So that will be a really clear one. I think thinking about it in your spaces is what are you providing and when are they doing the work? If it's being done during the work day, then it has to go to the LEA. If it's being done outside of the work day, then it can go directly to the participant. If it's a mix, then you might have to think what money goes to the LEA and what money needs to go to the participant. And that gets really, I don't know if I'd go there
And
myself.
if they're getting a sub, they're on contract.
But I would, what Jennifer has said is it's really your guys' responsibility to know what you're paying for and when you're paying it for.
Well, I thought the rule was we're not allowed to pay them. So I never have. So all the money that I ever pay is because of work they're doing on their own time, on the afternoons and evenings. Like I thought it wasn't allowed to do a sub agreement. If that's the case.
We generally don't pay people during the work day, right? Like they're coming, it's part of their job.
So I thought it's assumed that,
yeah,
right? Like
there
because
are
that's a
some
rule.
projects that it has been allowed, but there's very few that any of you do. And that's not from me, it's just the way that we operate. We don't have a lot of money to pay people. So we are like, oh, you're coming during the workday. This is in lieu of, we'll cover your sub to kind of get you to come work for us. That's our way of paying. But we generally don't provide stipends for doing work during the workday. And if we do, that's we've worked something out with either your coordinator or me to say, okay, well, this is an extenuating circumstance. We just don't have an exorbitant budget to be like, pay people for everything. A lot of the work they do here is volunteer. It's like the notoriety of I help the state. And that seems to be sufficient for most people. And go ahead.
That's all I'm trying to say is like, if the rule, if the exception to the rule is we pay them while we're giving them a sub or they're on contract, there needs to be a separate contract for that. Like I think when when we give contracts, it should definitely mean this is something happens outside of the substitute day. And if that's the case, this shouldn't be a question. This shouldn't be a problem.
I agree.
Well, what I'm gonna tell you is that, and I don't disagree with what you just said, Ricky, but what ends up happening is the PRF says stipend on it, we're paying a stipend, but I'm coming to a committee meeting. Those two don't live in the same realm, right? If they're coming to a committee meeting, that implies they're working for us. So then they cannot be receiving a stipend. So that's kind of the conversation of this whole thing is like, what's the definition of a stipend, which is very limited in scope and anybody that will get to use it. And then the contract means they're working for us, whatever that means, and whatever they're doing for us, then that's under a contract.
So it's kind of like our standards implementation folks, they're gonna come to UDL training. All we're covering are their subs. They're not getting paid for that day, it's just part of them doing the work. They're somewhat, they could consider it as compensation, we give them their allotment for designing, but really we're training them as a way of us providing value to them, hopefully with some quality learning, but they're not getting paid for those days. They're getting a sub reimbursement or they're just showing up and we're covering mileage or hotels. We're not paying them to come to UTL training. It's kind of an expectation of if you're gonna be working for us, we have specific training we need you to have. And so it's just being thoughtful about when you're gonna give a stipend is when they're working outside of the school day.
No, don't use the word stipend.
Oh, what do you?
Contract.
Contract.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we not-
But they have to be off contract to have
A
a contract.
stipend,
See,
okay,
this
so
is the
let's
problem.
define that. Stipend means they're coming, sitting, listening to you talk. They're not contributing anything that USBE is going to have at the end. And you're literally giving them a treat payment for them to come and listen to you. That's a stipend.
After hours.
No. Anytime.
Basically, our department doesn't do.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So stop using the word stipend.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cassidy just put it out there in a line.
But
We don't
again-
give stipends, we give contracts.
But this is what I was trying to say though, but again, so what we're using is the word contract, but we're asking if they're on contract. This is the confusion that needs to be clarified in
Well,
some way,
but
shape, or
and
form.
I'm gonna say that confusion needs to be handled by us in conversation with them. So with saying you're going to be working after hours, so we need you to sign this so we can pay, because you cannot get paid while you're on contract with your district. Yeah?
It's a conflict of interest to have multiple contracts.
Double dipping. It's called double dipping.
Makes sense?
It's not a conflict of multiple contracts.
So what would we call that? Because there's the C7 and then like there's that contract.
That's the C7A, service agreement.
So the
Okay,
C7A
so
is the
which
contract.
do we call it?
So a C7 is your paper that says you have $5,000 to do a project. That's a C7. Yeah, the C7A is the actual service agreement that they sign and that purchasing works with you on to fill out.
And then there's another contract, so like Schools to Watch has a contract that's different than a C7A. When do we decide which to use?
Purchasing can help, but usually a service agreement is that it's a very short process. It's gonna be, I'm paying you for 8 hours of labor with an individual. But it's specific to a very small project. Schools to Watch is like for a whole year, or it could be for 5 years or whatever. That would not be on a service agreement.
And it's generally the price point, so if you're under $3,500 C7A, when you start getting above that, you have to start looking at other options. We're only allowed to go to that price point.
You talked about having substitutes and being on contract or off contract. Are there any nuances related to someone who takes a personal day and are they on contract or off contract? Or if someone is saying, I'm taking a personal day to participate in whatever it is, I just want to clarify, is there any difference in that space? Because you said if they're on contract, they can't be paid. But are they considered on contract if they took a personal day to leave school to participate in whatever it is?
That's a great question.
They are on contract because they're being paid by their district for that personal day. So when they sign their contract, and you have to understand, I'm learning 101 on school contracts because I didn't understand how they worked. But where is Erica?
Erica Horseland, over there.
There she is. She was really good in the support staff meeting explaining that. I mean, they get their 180 whatever days it is. Personal days are included inside of that. They're on contract that day.
1440. Yeah, 1440 hours.
Well, yeah, 180 days.
Yeah, whatever the number, whatever their contract is. So if it's a day that they're still being compensated from the district, they're on contract that day. That's basically it. If you're getting paid for today from your district, regardless of what the color of that is, they're on contract.
There's no difference, is what you're saying.
That would be correct.
Yeah, and I had to get that clarified because we had messed up with Todd on that one. So Todd was our guinea pig on this. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
So, as specialists and we communicate with them, why don't we just get rid of the word contract and say, if you are being compensated by your school district and you have hours that you're working, we cannot pay you for that. This particular piece of information or this particular work that you're going to be doing, we will compensate you for that's not included in that. And just get rid of the freaking word contract, because that seems to be the issue.
You can do whatever you like to say to them, understanding that you just have to have
Understand,
that.
totally.
What we have to do on our side is our paperwork, you can
That's why I
articulate
said
it
the
however you
specialist,
need
yeah.
to. Yep.
We can just refer
A lot
to
of
it.
it's how we communicate, right?
Yeah.
What we have to do for the paperwork is on our end.
Absolutely,
How the-
absolutely.
How the people that we interact with engage, as long as they realize you're being paid by your school district, we can't pay you, that's great.
Well, they may or may not know what that means to be being paid, if it's a personal day or if it's not. Just if it's a school day, if it's one of your work days, is essentially what we're saying.
If that's what, whatever that language needs to be, that's perfect.
That helped clarify, so we're basically gonna discontinue the use of the word stipend. You're putting people on
It's the S
contract or
word.
not.
Yeah, it's the S word. Understand that when I see PRF with stipend in it, my antennae go up and I'm like, what's going on here? Because then you can't have a C7 or a service agreement attached to a stipend because those don't live in the same world. Understanding that teaching and learning by all aspects doesn't really allow stipends, but we could have. I don't know what your arrangement has been, so when it comes, I get really conflicted with what that language says to me. So that's why we're trying to make sure that we're all on the same page using the same terms so that it will flow better.
Good to go? So just take one word out of your vocabularies today.
The only difficulty with the contract is that the date's specific. A stipend can cover a task, whereas
A stipend never covers a task. A stipend is, and I'm gonna use this in so part, my butt's in the chair and I'm just coming to listen to you. That is a stipend.
So the contracts are usually like a date range. So I usually make them pretty broad, because if someone finishes before the end date of your contract, you can pay them and say the work's done.
Yeah.
But you wanna make sure the contract gets them through the project. Okay, your support staff know most of this, it's just a language shift, so just being really clear, we're putting people on contract when they work for us.
That's what we would hope.
Okay.
What else did we have to?
I don't think Ricky's clear.
Ricky, are you still not clear?
I like it.
Okay.
I think because I heard Kathy say it, I'm gonna say it again, is I don't know if I had the same definition of what a stipend was. In my mind, it was like, if you're going to facilitate this 6-week course, which had nothing to do with sitting in butts on seats or
Yeah.
whatever, but you would receive a stipend for doing this work of whatever the amount was. So I think that was just the issue, but I mean, if I just change that word to contract, I'm okay with it, like, it's no big deal.
So anytime they're doing something for us, that's a contract.
Consider them as contracted
I think we need
employees, right?
to
Contracted.
get a definition now for those words and distribute to everyone understand and what we cannot use and what we can use.
Well,
It's just
the
very
agency
simple.
definition of
Wow.
stipend, this is where definitions are handy, right? A stipend is not what a contract is, and what we do in teaching and learning are contracts. I wouldn't agree with that. Does that, I haven't seen an opportunity yet in my time.
If they're on a committee for you, they're working for you, right? They're providing feedback that USBE owns and is using. That's an agreement with us. That's not a stipend. Truly, a stipend is just that I'm coming, you're gonna tell me something, I might leave with a book, and I'm done. I'm not contributing to that process.
We used to pay people to attend things, we don't do that
Yeah.
anymore, so the stipends have really just gone by the wayside over the last few years, so. Okay. Thank you.
Wait, I think we also should have a conversation about hotels and when we can do them and when we can't do them.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
So we all know you have to at least be 50 miles away. But if you're not starting your conference or whatever it is
till 9 o'clock, and they live 50 miles away. They don't need a hotel the day before. I mean, I drive 33 miles every day to work, so, you know.
They don't need or are not allowed.
Well, it doesn't look good, and I think that's wasting money, to be honest, because.
Starting at 7:30, that makes realistic sense.
I mean, that's a little more realistic. I mean, no one wants to drive, 80 miles at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Are they getting gas allowance?
Well, they get mileage.
They can get mileage, but once again, remember, if they're on contract, that goes to their district.
I would, I mean, there's no need to pay some of them the night before. Being intentional with your dollars, not everyone needs the same treatment. Just like our staff meetings now, like certain people need to be at certain parts of the meeting. Certain people need a night before the meeting, and certain people need a night, like a 2-day meeting, need that night.
I mean, if you're driving 300 miles, yeah.
You come in
the night
before. So just be thoughtful about it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of teachers know what the deal is with the 50 miles, and so sometimes they fight back, but, it is state money, it's our money that we've put in, so we need to be, fiscally responsible with that money. So it's their money too, and maybe that's why they think they can use it, but it's still, we need to be the ones showing them what the standard is and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
That's just fiscal responsibility, right? Okay, thank you.
Anybody got questions other than that?
Does it matter?
Ricky's got a smile, we're good on that table.
Does it matter about time of year? I mean, if they're, okay, like winter.
Exceptions. And there always is.
I know, and that's not what you wanna hear, but there
Right.
truly is. I mean, we can
No,
have.
I say this because in previous years, there was more flexibility to it between the months of November and April than May and September. And so I didn't know if it was going to be changing in the spring or,
It's just
okay.
case by case.
Okay.
And if there's gonna be a snowstorm and they'd like to come before that hits, I mean, that's reasonable.
And we've had somebody that's like 8 months pregnant, traveling, that wasn't good for them. You get the exception through Jennifer to say, yes, that's good, they can come spend the night. Absolutely. There are always reasons why the norm should be is not, but that shouldn't be everyone just saying, I'm at 50.1 miles, therefore I get a night.
Yeah, right. Also, that reminded me when I'm gonna, sorry, shoot, what was I gonna say? It had to do with, what was it? I forgot.
We'll be here for a while and then come back.
Shoot, it totally left, it's not even important, no.
Do you need to go?
I did share it with you, but I can just connect. No, I actually just shared it through Google Drive.
Oh, okay. By yourself now?
But I can't,
Yeah. All right, the next part is gonna be the tech highlight, which all of you that are in the room still should stay.
I wanna watch her do it. I'll ever use it, but I wanna know.
Hey, there might be someday you'll be like, hey, I can help with that.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, I did just send it, or I can plug it.
It's coming. It's just a second to read it.
Trying to get the
I'm always called that.
but I'm still always so smart. So, yeah.
All right, Miss Cassidy, you're up.
Alright, awesome. Can I use the remote and everything? Cool. Alright, so it came to my attention last month, someone was calling a staff member in an LEA, Canyon School District, and they were on hold for like 15 minutes because they were trying to sort out a room rental. And I couldn't understand why, because when I did it, I would always use this thing called School Spaces. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. They are a web-based software company that work with school districts, charter schools, regional education agencies. So they allow them to take all their facility rentals, put them on a website, they categorize, index, and reference them all. So this way, you don't need to wait on hold with anyone, you don't need to chase emails back and forth when trying to reserve a room. As far as who can use it, it is open to the public, so anyone can do it along with USBE. It used to be in the past that you had to know someone at a district for doing a work group there. You had to contact them and say, please talk to your facility management because I don't want to have to send over a certificate of liability insurance and I don't want to have to sign a contract. And it was just, kind of, there was a lot of back and forth. So now, this tool is really awesome for reserving rooms. So there's not necessarily a website to visit because the LEA is their client. You'll go to the LEA's website. I am currently putting together a list of what LEAs are clients of this company. And so it will be on the G Drive for anyone to access. Basically, any district with a website that has facility management, facility rentals, whatever the subsection is, you go on there, there's a link that will take you to the website. So, for instance, these are two examples. Canyon School Districts uses it, as well as Jordan, and this is what the tool will look like. So again, anyone, whether it's, let's see, Sid, you like to do stuff on your own. You're very driven and you could sign up and register for an account and reserve your own rooms. If support staff want to, they can do this as well. Let's see, Erica, you're gonna be hosting a cactus training with Travis this spring. You can go in and reserve rooms in computer labs. It's so awesome. So you can go to school website, it'll take you to the link. Once you're there, the neat feature about this is that you only need one login, no matter what district you're looking at. So, and you don't have to waste time with chasing down phone calls, emails, all that. They just email you back and forth. It's beautiful and perfect. So you would log on to Canyon's website, rentals.canyonschooldistrict.org. .com, thank you.
No, it is .org.
.org, okay. And it would allow you to find a space. Everything on there, whether it's a soccer field, auditorium, meeting rooms, any room that they have available, again, they're all listed on there. You can specify what type of space, and then it will bring up a list. It will tell you things like what the capacity is, whether you can hook up, if it has AV already in the room, various details. It does list hourly rates, but don't freak out when you see those because when you make the reservation and you let them know that you're with USBE, the staffer will be able to say, oh, okay, yes, I recognize that. You're an education agency, we'll waive all that. Don't worry about it. So, to do that, you then go in, you can request a room. It will, I put this up here, because you can actually just take a tour of the page to figure out how to submit an application. Once you do, then it can take up to 5 days for them to get back to you, but they will notify you via email that everything is good to go. You'll then log back in, confirm the reservation. If you need to make any changes, you can. It's very user-friendly. I use this all the time. I know James Madsen back in the day, he actually told me about it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So you cannot request a date if it's fewer than 5 days away, like I said. They need some time to process the applications. You can actually go in and say you're doing standard revisions and you're gonna have committee meetings monthly. You can go in and request the same room once a month for the day, for the time, it all breaks it down. And you can do it all in one request. So it's very neat, very tidy, and user-friendly. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So I'll have more info as it becomes available. I'm still waiting on them to get back to me with a comprehensive list of who uses this service. But once I do, feel free to log in and create a profile so you can start using it. So, yeah.
Questions for Cassidy?
Concerns? Brenda?
Is there a place where you, when you're signing up and requesting to put in like a room setup, or is that our responsibility?
Yes, there is a miscellaneous field where you can say, I would like tables set up like this. And I know with Canyons and with Jordan, as well as Ogden, I want to say Davis when I used it with Davis, that they would respond and say, okay, yep, we'll have custodial go in, set up the room how you want it. So it just all depends. And that's the thing, with each district, it varies a little bit. So, Tim.
Cassie, so if I'm asked to assist in travel plan for the educators, are you suggesting that we tell the educators to use this resource themselves, or are we using it on their behalf?
No, you are using this to reserve the facility space where any meetings will be taking place.
So Jeannie might need a meeting down in
Right.
St. George. You can use this to find a school.
If they're a member.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Washington School District is using them, so, yeah.
That's
Is
what
it just
Cassidy's
K-12 and districts, or is it like universities?
You said yes.
That's a good question.
Now you
I
have to
know it's K through 12 at this point. I don't know if higher ed institutions have it yet.
She's gonna work on a list.
Yeah.
To tell you which.
Yeah. I had a whole lot more planned, so it kind of got cut short, but anyways, yeah. I didn't go over 10 minutes anyways, so there you go. No problem.
All right, thanks,
Not everybody in.
All right, given our time, I want to respect that we have things. The next portion, I know some of you are ready to exit, is for standards people, quality instruction, and I need to look at the PDF myself. Specialists. So if you are a standards specialist or quality instruction team, you are required to stay. If you're one of the other three teams, you are welcome to go.
Sheriffs were just turned in.
Where once they knew they wouldn't be back.
Ricky wants you released.
Released.
Okay. Anyway, everybody start getting.
I think it's called.
It says stipend because we didn't know.
Oh, see, I didn't get that. It was like, there was no option.
You are so
Who
was it? Because I didn't, I said stipend. It may still be.
There's like-
I said, so, yes, we'll be seeing it soon because we already turned it in. Yeah. Before we knew. Anyway, so I told them. I didn't know, so that's what I submitted. Yeah, if so, that was.
Conversations for
So,
time.
yeah.
Okay, but I think it's, see, this is where I have their.
Obviously, 5 more seconds.
Four.
I
don't know.
3. 2. Alright, so the last 50 minutes is really going to be your self-guided time on 2 different topics, depending on your needs. So I went through and kind of checked on where we were on standards revision resources and where you think things are complete, and then highlighted ones that haven't been touched yet, and looking at the team for that. So in the standards revision folder, in the copy of this template creation is the list, so you'll kind of know. I moved people around because some of you were like on multiple teams that haven't finished yet, and that's not gonna be super helpful. So you need to check and see where you are at this point, because it may not be where you thought you were. Some of them haven't been started at all, so you'll be like the starting group. And I did try and leave, if the group had started, people that were already working. So group 3, this one has not been touched yet, so if it's highlighted in yellow, there's like nothing done on it yet. So Robert just went through this process and probably has some tools that we can use. But it's gonna be Robert, Carl, Todd, and Rick for that one.
This is.
4 is done, 5. 6 and 7 are not done yet, so Melissa, Erica, and Tamara, I have you on 6. And then 7 is Kathy, Jolie, and Malia. The orangish one means you guys are still in progress, so this team, Jody, Jessica, and Jamie, I think that's what that means. You just needed one more session to finish. And I cut that team down, it used to be much larger. I'm just trying to get people not spread so thin. And then 9 hasn't been touched yet either, so I've got Jamie, Shannon, and Sid, and Nathan on that one. Okay. So those are the ones, I think that's it. Oh, and 12. Alan, Melanie, and Audra and Rookie are on 12.
Oh, crap.
Those are the ones that still need. And I want to revisit, we've been working on this for months. The intention is that they are like templates or resources for staff to use to go do that step. So tools that you can just pick up and say.
Can I just speak to that really quickly? So, we have the standards review committee, which is actually a pretty simple process, and we'll get that done. But we have some insights we can give to that as well. But then the next piece was those templates of, here's the meeting, people are coming in, what's that look like? And, you know, the templates for Sarah and Malia really cranked those out. It was very useful to be able to just grab them, plug in, and do it, so I appreciate that.
The intention of the templates is just like a starting point for staff. As staff, you still have the flexibility to amend those templates for your personal use. But being we have a lot of new staff and that we do this once every 7 years for most of you, that's a long time in between to go, how did I do this last time? And so having a template to just jump off from is the purpose. So my goal is to get these ones finished up in the next couple of meetings, and then do a peer review. You'll pick one that you haven't done before, or like you haven't been helping on the team, to go review and see if there's any questions or clarifications that would be needed to make that template as useful as possible. So I'd love to be done with this project by the end of February so that we're done. We'll have new standards starting in the fall that we'll be rotating in. Robert's in the process, preschool's almost done, so like we have standards right now going through it. So if you're not assigned to a team, you're off the hook on this particular assignment. If you are, what I'd like you to do is maybe get with that team real quickly. If you're on the elementary standards implementation team, you guys wanted some time together, you're welcome to use that time today, but you'll need to say, okay, I will meet with you guys next time. We're gonna do our elementary team meeting today. So take a look at which one you are. If you're not assigned, you don't need to worry about that. If you're not on Standards Implementation Institute, you don't need to worry either. You may go back and get to work. So if you don't have an assignment, you are free to go. If you're on one of these or are in elementary SII, stay and kind of meet with your groups. This was at some requested time for SII to kind of get together. So if you're not on SII, you don't need to worry about that either. Any questions? So the goal with your team, and if that means you need to meet outside of our meetings, is that by the end of February, when we come back for our March staff meeting will be peer review of these tools.
Yeah, that's fine.
The goal is to have it done. I want to give a deadline so that we have a clear anticipation.
That's a great team.
We don't have a mid-January special meeting because it's on Martin Luther King, so we'll meet in February. I think we only meet once in February, so you guys might need to find a time outside of staff meeting to do this, given we missed 2 specialist meetings for the next 2 months, because I think the next one's President's Day. So just keep that in mind if we want these done by the end of February for March meeting. Okay. If we're freaking out here middle of February, I could push it to the middle of March, but I'm kind of sick of this project. I'd like to see it be completed. Yeah.
Just looking at step 9, like that's the next place where I go, but nobody else on that team has been there. So all 4 of us don't have experience with that.
I would say the same for 12.
Shannon's been through that.
I haven't. I'm confused.
Elementary math, didn't you?
David did.
Oh, okay. That's why I put you on that one.
I can help.
Are you on a different team at all, or?
I'm only on 8.
That's almost done. Okay. Let's do that, because I think, Jamie, you're on 8 as
If you want, if you don't, I won't.
Oh, no, I mean,
If you're like, no, then I won't.
They're requesting help.
Okay, I am saying I can if you would like. If you don't, I won't.
Jody will join group 9. Thank you for finding that. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of how it is. All right. This time is your time. Do what you need based on your assignments.
then we've gotta meet for SIL.
Let me finish this.
Okay, so that's why.
Did you guys choose a different one, Jamie?
I was on-
Probably just talk where you are and it comes perfectly.
Yeah, probably if you send the voice out.
It's not here.
Yes, I talk over there, you look.
Apparently over there.
Sorry, said I almost smacked you in the head.
90 days without when I went to task to plan a meeting for a assess group in the future. Is that okay?
Yes.
We have to meet for the elementary stuff right now. And I don't have any questions. I'll let you know. I'm gonna meet the task. Yeah, we got the time.
Okay, and then Shannon's gonna
Oh,
send
just 1 minute.
She's gonna schedule a time.
Oh, okay.
Right now.
Oh, okay.
No, you were great on the team.
Yeah, I'll just schedule
But I
the
in our folder. Make sure I wasn't losing. No, I appreciate it. They invite you to our calendar?
Yeah, so here are my 7 I recommend, and here's some alternates if you.
So you went down the road of saying here are 10, you pick 7, but you're saying here are the 7 and here's some backups. Do you approve it? Did you do that?
Because you guys are so awesome.
Like longer than needed.
7 ended up coming out of those 10.
Because I couldn't schedule a meeting until I had. The second piece is you asked Sherry. Sherry.
I was an A.
So I didn't communicate people that are supposed to send it to their staff. Get names for 5 people.
You send a calendar invite. Let's go from 1 to, what do you think?
Because they may or may not take that. They may just.
I don't know if she's gonna be in or where.
As far as 8, cleaning up, like what?
If you have
Okay.
conservative members, as soon as they are not in the committee, already have a sense of and a sense of authority, but it's not the illegitimate feeling, it's just like random.
Summer Institute people.
I'll just get it done. And it's not even through the process itself. If I give you a task of deciding as committee, do you recommend or not revising status?
Melissa, you wanna breathe for a second?
I think that, you know.
Right now, or your name?
Hey, Friday morning. So the 90-day review.
So the membership list that kind of.
Friday morning, you and I, because then this Tuesday, have a meeting.
So I think it's okay to keep some of it in there, like, as examples, like, for access feedback. Do you guys want to meet with us for elementary? You don't need to address the code, like. I don't think they heard us. What about me? Do you guys want to meet with us for elementary?
So what I would do is I would say only
For
that.
the exercise, yes, we're dividing and conquering right now, so that's fine. But I'm right here. Do you want us to tell
So
you
does
what we're thinking?
of.
I was taking a
7,
side
does
route.
that
We're
include
thinking the age of our boys. Did you hear about the 4 blocks where
We
there's like?
talked on, I don't know, one day last week.
Yeah, you and
Okay.
Yeah, or you and I.
Yeah, and
About
since
Oh,
then,
yeah.
the 2 of us, we have planning.
The 5 and the 5, we
on
don't have
Fridays,
those.
we're like, well,
So.
this seems pretty relevant, we're just gonna get some ideas to see.
We were just thinking in each of the half days, throwing in a brain break. I'm wondering if when we did like the training for the designers, if you wanted to take like 30 minutes to be like, this is the rationale behind it, here's the 4 activities you could do,
30
here's
minutes is a lot of time, but sure.
Well, we're
20 minutes or.
I think how much free breaks, like,
Are you available February 5th?
Like, I don't care one way or
Yeah, it's
the other,
February
I just want.
That's what I'm.
we would like you to kind of have a description of the 4 brain breaks and walk teachers through them.
Yeah, and we can talk to you more about it later if you guys are meeting about something else.
Then there's a conversations with board members.
Yeah.
But UDL is, well, UDL is more just, is that about integration, or is that more about just like good people?
I think it's gonna be like all day, but we
We just wanna know if you're right now, we're gonna do this, I think, so we join the summer implementation, we're happy with either one, we just wanna know if we should make the move. We went to a meeting and
So then she was trying to.
I figured that was the Raptors,
Are you like 11 to 12? 11.
So,
Okay, so who is this kickoff meeting?
So you're
Then I
talking
am not
about
going to
like-
designers.
yes, and so we're gonna go through that right
That's the
now.
only
and
thing on my
talk
calendar.
about
So I need to let my career designers know we need to be ready February.
None of us have yet, so that's something we need to do.
Is that something I know just gonna update you about that?
I'm trying to get on track.
Understandable. There's a lot of tracks that we're going over.
Templates for number 3
Did I grab it?
participants for state standard.
Okay.
The wallet right before.
So,
So the standards
I
review
stole the
committee
last
is.
She has a meeting just from 11
It's in
to 12.
Which
it's
building?
been-
So, yeah,
That's
some
number
other
Oh, we
meeting,
heard
right?
you at like 1:45.
Oh, yeah, so that's
Straight
great.
18-ish.
Yeah, so you
No,
might send me
four
a
is
calendar invite
something
for that
else.
time.
I just copied it.
The membership is
Okay,
7
so that's the
individuals
brain break part.
expertise
What?
in separately
On
reviewed,
February 5th, that's
appointed by the state board chair, including teachers.
And that's all
oh
I
yeah,
have
like
with TA.
1:45 to 2:15.
Okay, were you doing anything with health? Because that was
They
the
take
part that
your
I said would be
recommendation.
nice.
And they take your
Yeah.
recommendation.
Or something else.
So what
Maybe
we
during your
do
time,
is
if you wanted to give tips
that
for
language
the
needs
other
to go
people
into
of
the
ways
template.
to integrate health, because they're gonna be up to doing it unless you wanna have
So
like a health person there.
here's the.
Thought you didn't.
Or have
There
possible
really
health.
isn't, there isn't an elementary health person, like that's the thing,
Out
it's
of
like they're,
Yeah.
they don't exist.
So maybe if you
I
took
would
like
like them to,
maybe
but they
15
don't.
minutes to do the brain breaks and then like 15 minutes to explain
about how it
standards
can-
and
It's
how to
already
integrate
there,
standards.
right?
Does
Yeah,
that
I
sound
can do
good?
that.
Staff submits a written
And then
request.
that way
they
there
have
can
to
be like at
seven
least one thing that has,
Okay, so that's
like they're doing, I don't know, math,
7
but
individuals with expertise in this
with
subject.
health or
matters
something,
and
I don't know,
strategy.
whatever. Or a litity thing, they're doing a reading,
Faculty
writing,
of higher
something,
education, education.
discussing, but it's a health topic that happens to be a health standard,
And that'd be great.
right? Do you see what I'm?
Should number 3
Because then-
say,
That's a great one.
Because in the health can be fun, but it's not like
Step
this is your
one
health
through
test, it's
many?
like, this is literacy.
USB
We just happen to be covering a health
Yeah, that's all we need.
standard,
totally, they have said,
which is kind of our whole vision.
they went from 4 to 3.
Not
Because
making
really
them
it comes
do-
down to you, the expert, to be able to
When
identify seven
we
people.
all approve
But I think
the
that
schedule,
we
I
ought to
don't
have-
send you a calendar
You're awesome.
invite.
Rank
That was in
policy
policy.
that you mentioned.
Summary.
You know, the group ought to represent the diversity of the state. There's some other as you're looking at those 7
So,
people, that you,
In our
as you said, you know,
planning
that you don't end up with
How many
7
reviews
like.
are
Did you already
Yeah,
create
so
a
does
document?
everyone have their folder, just
I'm
the
gonna
summer
create it and put it in
institutional
that
truth, put a
folder.
bunch of things in there.
I'll jump into this right now.
So, I don't know who started that. Are you okay? Okay, okay, there were some things on there that we had questions about, so we're like, we think some things, but we're not sure about some of these words. So what we did when we met is we thought what could be a potential outline for the train, the first initial day that kicked off with the training for designers. And then what could be a potential, like template for a facilitator's guide that they would design in, and then a potential lesson plan. So that when they go to create their lesson plans, and have
One of them should be
lesson plans that are
USB,
similar.
blah, blah, blah.
Remember, these are 3 things we want to do. So if we go to the kickoff framework,
Right.
So you should
They
say
go
minimum
to
of
the
3,
USBE special.
and then in parentheses, we write capable of
okay.
The interesting thing is
I don't know,
that
Sarah,
step
can you
2
explain?
standards revision templates
Here, we
has
were
like
not sure what we were
additional
doing.
information for
That's not like what we're like, we're
the
not
standards
meeting.
review team to consider. Here's the issue, I mean, if we're trying to think about, alright, what would be useful for somebody going through the
preschool is a little
process?
bit different.
What
and
special,
like
it's like,
areas,
for a
We have to
specialist to
consider like what's the
consider,
content.
it's things like
Right.
the standards review committee.
Troy, I should say that because when Troy did this, I was, I didn't.
Thinking
I definitely went to health and I definitely went to science.
Again,
Really clear from the
I've
start
based,
about
yeah, like
the
we've
role, and
addressed
so
standards and
when the Speaker of the House
Yeah,
says,
so
hey, we can serve on this
obvious
revision
crosswalks and connections.
So I think
I don't know what
I think
is communicated.
Yeah, I think we'll
We need to
talk
create
a little
something
bit
that
more
would
how
go
we
to
want the
them that
designers
would
to
help
pull that out, but I
them
think
You have been
Set the
selected.
expectation.
Yeah, health, we're adjusting for.
You are not.
There was something
Role of this
very
committee.
weird
You are
about
not
the
a
document.
You are not a
Give an
reviser
example
of
out
your
of it.
existing standards. You
It
really
really is, because
glancing at them
it
and
said
very
stuff
confidently
like,
and
no, 'cause
saying,
there's just a bunch of examples.
do they need to?
Yeah, so I
Focus
that's
on
what
the-
I mean.
And you're gonna come together in two
It's
months.
a
Yeah, I think that's it.
It's
But I also, I want
Come back and make
It's
our
the game.
recommendations
It's
about this.
Template should be.
That's
To the
early.
board.
That's
Yeah.
early.
Yeah. And then if they want, like, they're
So
giving you
what should the writers and the board consider in
is
terms
over
of
time that can't
the
really be
changes
assessed.
in
So there's one that's supposed to be a
Because
form,
the,
but our
I
one
couldn't
that
see,
seems to be
and then
like
you could
have
only
to-
talk
we've
about.
got to
define the
provide
roles so
a
they don't
process
feel
so
they're
that
coming
you
in.
can
Yeah, so that was
make-
in depth
and
thinking about the
immediately
public
feel like
school
putting
meetings.
standard
3B
So it's
needs to
been
say
really
this.
surprised and
That's
stuff,
what
I was like, okay,
I
now I
got
know what
it.
I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I'm
we
like,
have like
okay,
the
this-
I
remember
reading
these.
Like in law, we have the survey type of panels, so teachers can
We're
be
doing the
there.
same thing.
I just wonder that was what I was thinking.
Same thing as well.
That was what the other
It's like they
one,
wanna
just
see the
I don't
color
think
of the house,
your
and
survey
you
is
know,
hard,
so you
I
can
recognize
totally
like
out.
these questions
I
are
don't
just
think that's
Yeah,
there.
and
Okay,
we need
So
to,
if we look at
in the
notes
steps,
And then I wanna go
Shannon
to
and I made
7
on
is
that
the
USB.
here's possible
I just opened
language
one, because our first thing is, we
that
really
the
read out
Secretary of the
last,
House
so I
and
gotta get
President
emails
Senate
out to the
could
designers,
use
inviting them to this.
The survey?
in light being able to be able to send that
Yeah.
invitation.
So
That's something
Or
we
even just.
need to
My,
talk about.
what my mind was doing was like,
You
and
there's potential facilitators.
have like.
And their role will be to
Oh,
do
we
these
are like, we
things.
need to send an email to the people we're inviting. Like if we
It
just
is
all
not
these were
two.
listed, and then just in that doc description, does that make sense? And this would be like an example.
Well,
You have to, otherwise someone has to go through the.
And I like to
It's
attend that, you're not
Yeah,
writing, you're not getting into individual standards or language.
Have been chosen, we haven't selected facilitators yet, we will by February, so that those people don't keep.
That's the writers that will come back
They
and,
were helpful.
you know,
So I think we just send it to all of the people saying,
it's really a bit of
whether
a
we know they
challenge
will
here,
or
because you
won't
really
be,
got
just
to
send
be
them all the same one.
broad
and
enough
then
and specific enough
once
to
we
be
choose how
able
many we
to.
need,
Then it should be
well,
something.
you've been invited to
Number
facilitate
5
or
is
we
need to
didn't
be
talk about it.
Yeah, like I
So
said,
it's helpful because I've had a hard time realizing.
yeah, so we need to either,
Then
so
what's
decide,
on this
well,
file?
so then I was kind of thinking
Unsure
maybe we
even
don't do
with
the
the-
Google form, and leave the others to work
So
on.
it's
Because
like,
then someone like my understanding is
Standard
that
Well, it's the same thing with the board, I mean, we wanna watch those health centers, they sat in there for 7 hours.
Google form,
the,
I think if they didn't fill out the Google form.
Going through, change this word to this, with,
So it's just
after
that
months of
integrated
work
one
of
person.
experts.
So I think that's one.
And they
person
wanna
to
change,
say that.
which
Yeah, agreed, and
seem,
then,
you know, and it's so, it's sort of like the definition.
like if we sent individuals.
You
'cause
change
I
that
sent
one word,
additional
you
ones
change
to
it
math people.
significantly.
Yeah.
So everybody who applied for math all send, but then we need to choose one of us
That's
to
not
send
the
it to
role,
the integrated.
the whole process,
And I
it's
sent
like
one of the signs.
the board,
I got zero response.
Too much in the weeds.
well, they, but then if you get these review committees too much in there.
Uh-huh. They're just
and we
building
pull up all
up.
of the.
Robert did a stellar job of like,
So you
brokering
just
stuff
have
into
to-
a high level extension.
I don't mind
Really
the
high level,
sending
really
an email
concrete
to the
things,
integrated
doing
people if
high
you guys
level,
want me to.
Great, because we already wrote that down.
We are the 90-day
And but for, so, and I
role.
think we were
Yeah.
They're really
thinking
just
back to
these
some of
sounding
these
things.
other
90-day
Well, here's the other,
until
look
we,
at these,
like, know we
Because
have
if
all
this
our
is-
what do you,
components,
you know,
so
what do
we're
you
not
like?
here, but now we
I
know.
know.
What do you,
Okay.
what do you
Oh,
like?
I was
What are the
wondering.
things that are not
We've
there
got
that you think should be there? And top,
So I think maybe.
we're not in the,
90-day review.
it's, but it's just, you
We're
know,
just the step,
Back to date.
those things that
submit
we
this
need to
as a
come up
total
with.
report. So
So I
let's
think
start
we
at
said
the
that
establish
all
the
the
date.
filled out
And she
to
had
be-
para, educator,
Do we,
administrator.
wanna say by when?
No,
we
we
can
don't
try
need
that,
to
so
do
that
dates.
not
But I think that experience.
What we
at
do
this time
is,
Fund staff, which I think.
Or do we feel ready to send it
What
out?
what I was thinking is that we
Here's
do
the invite to send to
make
the
sure
five.
that
I'm
the
fine with that.
standards are in
One
the
person who said, I need to talk to your class tonight
format.
because I think
They
we're.
don't come in thinking their job is
Format.
one thing, and we have to convince them.
that they have
I had
done
no kids.
Not
quality
to have
review.
gone through this,
So I
they never will have to go through.
I think
but I
I
think it's
sorry.
I thought we were doing,
No, we said we shift them up to CTE.
where does 7 begin and end, and where does 8 begin and end?
Yeah,
Because the
that's-
draft standards are only for police.
I saw what was
And the
happening.
90-day public review.
Please don't make me go
are very
through that.
separate.
Send it to them now.
But I wanted to make
Tomorrow
sure
after I
that
talk to
in
the
7,
sharing one.
Was there,
doing all
is
this
there,
stuff, getting everything on.
so you have these 10 parents and then you've got these 7 experts.
Figure out.
Has there been conflict between those two? Do they get along?
Okay, I just wanna make sure that we're.
Yeah, so I think that's like the agenda for like the public hearings, the public meetings, ours has the surveys.
With the one we sent for integrated or with the one that Jennifer had them just put their feet
Yeah, Karen knows about the changes.
Chris has the option below the best feedback.
And then
You have the first one that we still have.
Oh, I know you're on your Instagram.
I think so.
So
here, I created a checklist.
This is how
Yeah,
this whole.
but that's so you don't necessarily have people do that.
Interesting.
But or not.
You represent all students.
They don't understand. Just
So
mix it.
there's, if you
Where
have people
are you
that are
coming
working
from
separate preschool
versus
integrated,
what's in these standards? Do you know?
The reason that I
What's
kept
good?
those 12 though.
Or you don't want? I don't know if that's the question.
To me, this would be 3 different options.
And that email says that.
It does, it says at this time, designers have been notified, we haven't selected the facilities yet, we'll be selecting them by February.
Okay, so if we start working through this,
By the end of
So
February.
if you
Robert,
can
you're
send emails to
identifying
send that
that in
template's
order
there, if you
to
wanna
submit a
send it to
written
other
request to the
preschool
state
people.
board
I'll send it
for
to all
your
the people who
7,
filled out the
we need a
form for
sample written
integrated,
request
and then
template that
from that,
goes.
people will be able to
So
do
I
it.
started creating that on page, which is right below, the second page, sample written request to the state board chair on current use of the letterhead. Do we have a sample text?
So I will
You
still
can
send
use
all of
that
that,
plug
that
in.
is any of this.
Master skill.
The one that, the form that we had the teacher fill out, and then we wanted to get to Karen.
But can I
And then within that, there's the recommended
That is, let's see, it's in our folder and it is called
putting language around these 7.
designers.
Yeah, it's called designers.
So I guess before we even write that letter, we need to speak to
So
the
we
7
lead
team.
designers for
You wanna have the
integrated or
draft
something, would that be
standards.
more clear, or is it fine, just designers?
Sorry, it's okay. Board memo and backup.
Yep.
You wanna have the draft standards, you wanna have,
We like
locations.
plan it, like what's our order or
And it sounds
linear
like probably
progress
the
here.
7 experts need to have the same
So
kind
let's
of,
go back
what
to
their,
your-
what their role is.
So evolved.
Cause they could easily just, to avoid conflict.
Because one of the things that I got was
we probably need to change
the
this.
board chair asked,
Yeah.
are any of the
Yeah,
names
just
submitted oriented
This,
on
I think this
subject?
file can, this page can be deleted
And you
after
also
we're
wanna
gonna
have
copy
a
this.
So when I said,
summary.
and I didn't know, but
This
see,
was just like the
when
list of
Lorraine
things
asked me
that
that,
we
I'm like,
needed.
well,
Cause this is
do you
kinda
want,
Is a summary of
is that a good
we
thing?
have
or bad?
you
go to the
Right?
board
And
to
what they
ask
wanted,
them.
is they
Actually,
wanted
this
some people
isn't
who've been
bad,
through
Because
we just say,
You can't summarize what
So
you're
we need to
doing.
make sure
for
we,
90
the grade
days.
band, I
Yeah.
think
at
we
least
did.
from this
Oh,
perspective,
this is
we say like.
And take that part out.
keep it
Thank you.
You felt like you
Um,
wanted school to be represented also.
We're just saying, hey, we wanna open up these standards. Well, we already have the folder with
Yes,
the
this
dates,
is
so
not,
what's
I'm
your?
doing the after,
yeah.
sorry. But it's still true, we are on the feedback.
That's
Also
right.
true that we want the draft
Just
standards.
because you're trying to.
And then
preach
you
it.
Caption
had,
summaries
section
versus
of
below a
so
step,
that's-
so that if I
that's
want
right.
to
That's
this,
what I'm
it's
saying.
right.
And
So
then
this
when
is
the
double
board
check with them, like,
approves,
it's
so
on
not
both,
by
but
the board approves, but
she's
when the
talking
board
to her in
approves,
preschool, so
you
she-
wanna
So that
have
would
these
be
things
what?
on the website, and what you wanna have on the website
It's just double
is.
checking.
So
No,
like
there's
in my
a
brain,
lot.
I have to
Yeah.
have
Comment
Once board
about one of
approves,
them.
there's
One
a
of them
generic
says
one
you
that I'll
have it.
send to all of the integrated people, and then,
Line.
So we know what their
I
problem is.
we already sent it to
We
them.
know
Okay,
that
so
it's with.
in my mind on
Like,
this, it was like, this was
So
like
that's
a,
that
like,
takes
these
you for
still showed up, but are you saying like,
If they do that, they bring it
for
in.
okay, that's what I was
And that we are
Post dates and locations.
potentially holding a kickoff like on February 5th, hold the date. So if you guys wanna send that to your, I sent it to Kim Babka, but nobody else on preschool, so
Would you mind?
What I,
You want
It's,
Right.
we've got it.
sent,
yeah, if you click up, so you can take, we tweaked our language a little.
Emails.
yeah, so if they've selected general
It's in
feedback,
here,
you
so-
still don't see
Not
that.
the generic one, that's the one that Shannon will.
So you
So
submitted
down
that.
here, and then
Further
further
down,
down, it
these
says,
are gonna be-
then there's, go
no,
down,
he
there's
just
a
said,
math.
choose these 7, then I took care of it.
It's the science integrated,
For.
I think, the integrated.
Oh,
She
did you just
was-
take that and
Yeah,
copy
I just
that?
took it, I can copy mine too.
Oh, that's fine.
And I actually sent it to some of the individual people,
We
and
all
so
did.
like, you've been selected for math grades 1 and 2,
Say,
and then the
I'm
next
not
one I
done
said
with
you've been
these.
selected
Yeah,
for
number
math
4
grades
though.
3 and 4,
Yeah,
so
so
they know
you
like
need the
what
link
they're.
for
Um,
feedback to
these
see.
three
So they
have
have that
So if you wanna
already
see you've been selected
in
for
step
preschool,
8.
specifically in science,
So that's
you
also
can.
true.
It's
not
about
That's
step
also
8,
true
they have
for-
included
Okay, so-
locations.
And then it just says that, most likely we'll have to kick off on February 5th, it says that.
that
that we need to craft.
But when they do
I
a
think
survey,
that's
it
what I
was
got
spreadsheet,
yeah.
this is how it, when
I
they
know, I'm
download
just trying to
it,
wrap
it
my
came
head
back really weird.
But
Which
it's
is
got
February
four
11th.
emails that need
So
to
it only show
have,
them these two boxes if they hit specific.
Or,
So are both of these
survey
listed
for
specific, so
feedback.
that,
Might
write your
be a
proposed
place to
change.
start for February 5th. Does that make sense?
It's the second bullet, right?
Yeah,
And I
so I need
think
one more
like
bullet.
here in our notes where it says
Um,
like,
would be
write your proposed change for the standard metrics. Things that we need to
Email
do, like we wrote that we need to like craft an email to send to the designers,
wanna
so.
craft- yeah, you wanna have
But does
your
everyone feel
email
good
that
about
goes
this
out
initial
to
email, like what you have sent
stakeholders.
or will
Yes, ask
send?
them to.
Or notify stakeholders.
And
So-
I can do this kickoff one once we make all
And
of our
also,
decisions.
yeah.
I want you to send it to all the people on that.
So then select all of that and go put it in that.
Applications that are available.
No, not the
The
content,
integrated-
the
well, the
integrated.
integrated
Yeah.
Are we taking it out of this?
Yeah, all the people on that designer list.
And maybe we should,
I think that's
like
step
in
eight.
that, write in, like,
Julie.
write it, say like,
So
title,
this is,
like,
so
step
step 7 is
Start working
just
together, you may be
submitting to the
contacted by-
board.
This would just
How do you
be
submit
like
the
a great
standards
survey.
That's a good idea.
Like that step
to
should
get
be
their
just like a
approval
great
for the
survey.
90 days?
You know, that's true, hear myself.
Once the board gives approval for the 90 days due, that's step
And I think
8.
too, once we like agree on
Oh,
what we wanna do
fantastic.
for the fifth, then
Oh, because it's step
it'll be more clear what to exactly do. So, I think the first bullet, the emails to send now, we're good with. So we wanted to show you
So
guys,
I think, so you think my
what
number
we were
4
thinking
is step
for the-
8?
what a
Yes.
facilitator guide could look like
So
for
we just want-
participants,
do we need
what
to
a
step
live
four
for designers, what the
trigger
lesson
for
like
step
template could look like.
So where's our
And this,
So draft standards,
on the
the
second
board
bullet,
goes
just
to
like,
the-
these are like attached to.
So we're on the meeting,
So
notes. Look at the
everything's
facilitator guide.
Okay, so if
Yeah, so there's
sure
3
that
things
that's
we made
there,
that are all
because
embedded in the meeting. So the facilitator guide, the lesson plan template, and then our
You wanna-
facilitation
So-
plan. But I think it would make
I'll
more
just figure out how
sense
to-
for us to talk about the facilitation plan if we looked at the facilitator's guide and lesson template first. And we can of course change it.
all of what you do
back
with
up
step
here,
7
right?
is
You wanna
the
capture that
recommending
and
public
actually
So we're all
that
going to a
to the
facilitator
chair
guide.
or no?
which is step
I
7.
think you
And this
would.
would
I
be
think you
all
would say,
that
I think,
stuff.
These
And
individuals,
maybe, yeah.
these individuals.
Because
Something
literally
previous
the board says
participation.
facilitator, like,
Performed this
Michelle,
in the
make
past.
slides.
Yeah.
And like you don't plan those things after you.
And we're thinking that they could like mix it up in whatever order they wanted to within their
So
time
number
block.
1
That
is
within
ensure that the
each
standards
one,
are
we needed
written
a
and
model lesson to
approved
bring
ready
some
for
type of
public.
little
Yeah, I
research
don't, I
on
mean, I
the
just,
integration.
I think that's fine, it's just to give, and then to put 7,
We
you
are
know,
talking about
main
making sure
number
we're
1,
not
I don't even think we need
overlapping.
to put their
So
names, I
if
mean,
we're
obviously.
putting things in like,
I don't
once,
care.
when
I
the
would
draft
just say,
standards are approved by the board, we wanna post
you know,
standards,
person
post
one,
dates and
person two,
locations for 90
and
day
then
review,
have
link
all
the
that.
survey for
That's
feedback.
theirs. The location is ours.
We can,
There's 10 names.
and then notify the
board chair has, I
stakeholders,
think,
like,
got some short
I'm thinking about
stuff.
how all of those things are done.
It's just not teacher
As
I
not
think
you go to the
our
board
vision
because
is that
when the
within
board
their
notifies
like
the
3 hour
stakeholders.
block, they would have 1 5 to 10 minute
Yeah,
frame.
just
But
a sample
the, like,
So that
releasing the
over
locations is part of the 90 days.
4 to do, like 1 in the
But
morning,
it-
1 in the afternoon.
Doesn't it have to be
Yeah,
included in
just
the
it- it
board
gives
for
a
the
sense of
action?
That's why on the
Prior
kickoff,
to
we
the-
talked
the backup.
about
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
4 ready that
Yeah,
with
we
the
did, we put it
description
in the
that
board
she could
because
say,
that's one of the
here are
things
4
that Ricky's-
possibilities,
Ricky has
and then
it,
we
but
can
they
decide
changed
who
it on
does
review
what.
during, I
And
don't
I've
know if
seen
that ended
them
up being.
like go doodle for longer than they've been
You
doing
didn't put the
math.
locations
I
in.
said I didn't know because I didn't know if it was gonna be
But
approved
it
yet,
gives
so
you
they
a
weren't scheduled.
like, here's the
Recognize
purpose,
that
that
person's
speak to
name.
size, it does
That's
that
good.
situation.
You're fine.
So which is funny, because then they ended up adding to mine anyway, and I had 6 instead of 3.
Maybe we're not
Same
selecting.
thing.
And do we agree about like the model lesson
So
and
I'm
research
thinking-
and the work time that those
So
3
week 7 and 8,
Who's gonna pull?
like, we don't wanna overlap,
So,
but I'm like, if you.
And so we just kind of put in like at the top, like dominant discipline would be
Before it
ELA,
went to
supporting
board,
disciplines would be up to that grade band.
all of the
for what
things
they're
that I
kind of
just
choosing.
mentioned would have been things that we would have recognized before
Should we
the
give
board
them
said yes.
for supporting disciplines?
But you're right, soon
well,
as the board says.
science
Give it
has
a
no
choice.
option.
Then it's posted on the
They get to
website,
do
then it's
ELA.
released.
I mean, the
So
thing is that
maybe
it
we
just
should
seems like a
say,
really
It's- it
prepare
prepare these items for
and
a
if
step
they're
eight.
if you have
I
any
think
areas.
I think that sounds better too.
No,
Because of our focus.
of my focus. The new
So-
standards are
So essentially, the other,
What if-
so here's this,
what if I
the
put
other
here
piece is
like
the language
That's
for,
and I put like
and it sounds kind of
science,
impertinent.
Feedback format.
Prior to approval.
Like during the location,
like
during
and
try to
since
say,
CLA is
here's
getting
the
feedback,
language
how are
we
you
would
formatting
like
it? Math, and I would imagine.
I think so, yeah, cause if I mean.
I think they would.
Maybe I'll just put.
I'm even going to say.
Like an intro.
Yeah.
That's
So let's
an
do-
explanation to me.
I want them to choose, but I think math is probably the easiest. nice place to get like health and.
Okay.
That might be a great place to put health.
So that would be a new doc. So do you want me to just say health, or do you want me to give them
Now,
the option for science, health, and special?
In step 2 is a
Take
bunch of
3 out,
stuff from
because you
health
don't have
systems
everyone
doing the
where they've also.
We had an
That would be
idea.
a construct.
Of
Yeah, we had an
serving on the
idea
same.
about that.
I don't-
Because I got
If
emails.
you go to
How
the
are
step 2,
they?
you'll see, you'll see the list.
Here you go. Yeah, sorry, we were like, have so many ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No,
it's
I
like-
think this is great.
So day 1 AM is ELA, PM is
So
math.
we need the standards
Day
ready to go.
2 AM is
Science.
science
Patients
and
ready to
PA,
go. We
social
have
studies,
survey
and it
ready to
follows
go.
the same
Overkill, but I also
model
want
with
to
those
have
3
some
components
survey.
and the short frame rate.
You see,
And
there's this,
for
there's a
the
re-
research,
this
we're
interview
not sure
process
like what the
template
current language
that
or
sit
research is.
together
You
with
prepare
a-
the notification.
that says
Prepare the
here's.
So
Okay,
is
so
it
then can we
feedback
tell you our
format,
ideas,
format
since
for
it's
keeping
STEM,
record of
there's like
public
a ton
feedback
of
the
stuff
same?
on it. And so there's this
Not both the
paper
same thing.
called like
That's step
STEM
in
to the
step
fourth,
8,
like
right?
the power
Yeah.
of publishing change in Julie's actually.
So that's why it says
This-
prepare the following for step
Of
8.
is like a template for like
in
the
order to
in-person
integrate
interviews.
Kind of
well,
going
What are you
through
doing
that. Is
here?
step 2 to go to the board to ask for
And so
review?
we thought that would be a great place to
You
put
don't-
like
but you don't-
in
you don't
math.
get the emails on this. That's what I'm confused
And
about.
then,
long? I was just pulling
oh
up
no,
stuff.
it's like 3 to 4
No,
Good.
and it has 3 principles.
Yeah, I know.
The first
So I
principle
guess
is
there's like
you have
the
to be
list,
strong
like
in your individual.
the format of like what you're
Second
doing in the
principle is you
meeting,
need to look
and
for
then there's like
natural
what
places where they
literally
can
of like
My
this
agenda,
dancing and
my
science, you
agenda
don't.
was what I was doing in the meeting.
like this is the commoners.
Yes.
So that's
So
my
that's
mind.
the keeping
Oh,
record.
we're not
Yeah,
gonna,
so
that's
there
not
will
necessary.
be a
So I
template
think
for
the
that.
this is
We
better
would
farther
just
along in
examples
years
or
for
like
the
some sort of
I think
miscellaneous
whoever
other
takes notes
pieces
will do
that
So
it.
we felt
are
like-
not present.
Okay.
To ensure.
So-
Because that's how Crystal did it, doesn't
Yeah.
mean that's how you do it.
Yeah. Or I would be like, this is the article, and he like mostly give them the guidelines of how it would be
In the
facilitated.
drive,
So that we
our
would kind of
designers
choose
aren't
that.
having to design something.
Is-
That's fine.
So we
They're
choose
not
the
just
like
research
feedback
and
format,
we'll
maybe.
design that
Because
piece.
like for most things, you can establish all
and
the
then the
dates and
part
locations,
that
like for Jody,
I
like,
really
you
want
have
to
a
do
website.
is
Is
on
what did you
integration
put in,
is
how did
looking
you
at
submit all the
disciplinary
board
literacy.
look at all the feedback?
Because
Did
I
you just
think
submit that? You just
science,
say we
science
considered the
people
feedback
in
as
order
being-
for
okay.
science to actually be
So maybe
taught
a
So maybe
summary.
some,
well
so maybe
in
instead of
grades K
feedback.
through 3. Well,
Summer.
and
Statute
for-
says-
So prepare.
they go through the program to have essentially case review.
And
that was the research I
Can I
wanted
ask
to
what
do.
the third principle means?
The third principle,
This is the mathematics course.
oh, that's looking at how,
So step 7 really is
How-
making sure your graphs are ready
what
to go.
careers and what types of opportunities,
And
pathways to get to
board
those.
memos.
And how
That's
many
it.
students see like in what way
That's
they
That's
do
it.
this
Step 8.
for engineering or for business or
Yeah,
for
it really
whatever.
is.
So,
So,
And that's really what, not,
but I think the
Go
same
to
like literacy, they have to
53A.
be
so maybe
literate
what we
in
do
order
at
to
the
do
end of
this
where
in
we have step
first
2.
too. So
So
the
this is
current
the-
ELA,
this is the
you guys
language.
are okay with it. So there's this book
3E42
on STEM that has a chapter on models and
the
reasoning.
statute
We
that
take
calls for extension committee.
like
And when you
two
look at
disciplines
it-
and finding connections, or you could be having like a dominant discipline with a supporting
Um,
discipline. Like there's
if
all
you
these
look at
little
line
models.
4,
So we were thinking of making a
So
model.
we've already
like,
got
establish and
full
review, right,
chapters,
the
too much,
membership
but it's what we've been
is
Do we
using.
need this in here? Because that's not something you create, that's just.
But it's.
We've already got, in number 2, we've already
Showing
got
that
A
like it
as
doesn't just
number
have to be
3.
science, technology, engineering, math, but you could have like
Mathematics course.
ELA in math
Yeah,
or
put
health
it in
in
our
math.
step, right, like if
and I
we
have an
access.
extra
Yeah, and
copy
that's,
of
It's
this
the
book.
and that's the letter that.
So I'll
asks
get
you
that
to you, not
Because
saying
it's
you
like,
should
that's
you,
not-
and then, so you
it's
can
not
see,
about math.
so you just have to kind of
It's about all this.
revise that, but it gives you the
That
idea,
line has
you can focus on one
Because we don't have
subject.
to do it.
Or you
I know,
might
right?
focus
I
on
mean,
2
honestly, if
subjects,
you read it
or
that way, you
you
could
might have
say,
a
well,
dominant
I
one
wonder
or one that's
what the
supporting,
context
and
of
it
it is.
explains those different roles.
And we're happy to like
We
name
start-
the
I think it
handout
started
that
with-
does that, so you can.
Started with math and they put it in there and then they
Just make
forgot
sure
to
you're-
change
No, I'm
it.
just
So-
checking all the folders to make sure, oh, board
So
update.
This
this last year.
Step one, you identified your 7 people.
Okay.
Right.
You created a list, got their bio, contact info, if they participated previously, you've got the whole
That might be a
thing
good
put together.
So they're
Then you're gonna write a written request to the state board chair, including language, something like this, along with the table. You're then going to send what needs to go to the Senate
So those were the
and
things that I
House,
thought I
because
would.
you don't contact Lorraine with that info until you have that info, so you've gotta contact the Senate
Well,
and
and I
House
think
to let them know that you're
first they have to
meeting.
understand
Right.
that there are different models.
Alright, so let me just say
And
what,
then why,
what I
what are the
did is
principles
I
behind integration?
I
Now, how
simultaneously,
does that really look
while
to do
I'm
it?
identifying 7
You didn't have an idea.
You reached out to the
There's
House.
strands,
Soon as the
there's
board
strands and
says,
then the
yes, go
numbering
ahead and
systems.
review. submit a
talked about
request
having
to
them
share
look
your
all the
meeting.
same.
that later, or if the last Friday.
All the ones that have
we just
come
kind of
out,
find something to
Or
wrap
the
it up.
superintendent.
format is
We
the
can ask
same.
him.
Superintendent's
So
office
there's
submits a
strand,
request.
For the
For that.
there's a short descriptor, and then there's.
That's
You,
Any other
you did
feedback on
that
this
before
guide?
hearing about
designers?
your
Yes.
approval or anything from the state board of the set.
No, the board, that's the board.
Right.
Before I had.
You're welcome. We just didn't want to come here.
Because there's two separate lots.
There isn't
Right,
one.
and
They're not,
one
they're
might
not.
take a
Well, there
while,
was,
the other
they
one,
did put
you know,
out,
so you gotta
Okay,
keep.
but I don't know
so,
where it is.
Okay, so
so
let's
the
go to that
question
now.
is,
Yeah,
if
you have
I'm
to
supposed
I got
to
the
do
nation.
this,
That's
so
the
that
that's
is,
where I got
Yeah,
the
but do we want to look at the lesson plan complete now or after we look at the?
Okay, so while you're waiting to hear back from the state board chair,
Right.
you send a written request
Pickup framework.
to
So it's
request to the
Through?
Jerry that will go to,
Say through.
better spell out what the role of that individual is.
Yeah, so let's identify that, but the high level step itself is to send a written
These would
request
be like us as the facilitators,
I
we
will
would have to
Oh,
assign
to whatever.
someone
Yeah,
through,
throw that as an
yeah.
example.
So who does it go to? It goes to
Starting with like
the Senate?
going over the agenda, explaining how the content team and a grade band team.
It goes to the Speaker of the House.
A few, she'll be here for some of the logistics to like as you're
Submit
designing
to,
these things.
what, graphic design?
I know I have to checklist one like, cause we have a 90, we have a checklist for 90 day right here. Yeah. Like, we really need to have. Well, and maybe even need to name
And what's Sherry's official title?
their feedback, grade band and.
Through the office of
and then
I would
superintendent.
just say through
Should
the,
we do that?
like
Prior to survey,
Schedule
so
responses,
survey
responses, rather than
responses,
for executive session.
location of meetings, other than that.
I
I will tell her
was gonna say,
exact
I
changes
just-
made based on feedback and if she has responses.
I think I better wait for that one too.
Or teams with.
But then I would include the following language in that email request that they can use to cut and paste.
Great.
so then we just
It's that
need,
language.
Grade band.
a copy of
So
the
then we
memo,
like take
which
your
we
tag
have
and go
copies,
here.
just need to read it.
I love
It's
that. Okay.
referencing the
Then one
statute.
of us would talk about like the rationale
yeah,
behind
per the
having
re-
this
per the
integration
statutory
institute, like
requirement.
why are we even
I think,
doing
yeah,
it?
something,
And then a little bit of an overview. of
something
the
to the
reason.
effect of
I'm gonna add down here.
a committee, a writing committee has
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
completed their draft.
I think it
It's,
is.
no,
They're,
this is this is way early.
Public
This
relations.
is
Oh,
not.
Just getting the
I
review
think we should
committee.
probably
What they're
do
doing,
something
this review
with
committee, all they do is they're looking at the
I was thinking
current
after we had that
standards
we
that are in
didn't include
place.
as much as we should have, but
I
put
did
it
too.
in there with it.
Do
But
those need to
I
be
what the
required?
five parents
Where do
do.
we wanna add
The
that?
five
We might
parents.
want to
Oh, okay.
rate and maybe even how
They don't,
these
they don't,
staff are,
they're not
each
looking
thing
at
that
any
we
music,
do,
they're looking at
we
the
have
subject
those
matter.
tenants.
Like each of us.
Yes,
Math.
so I thought maybe I need to see.
So then it should be that these standards, the social studies standards or the subject,
Maybe we'll be
the
like,
subject
oh, Shannon, take
standards
this part that is gonna be in math and
were
Sarah, take this
created,
part, you know.
I think we'll probably
maybe-
divide up the day.
were revised and approved by the State Board of
And be
Education on
explicit about
such
it.
and such a date. The State Board of Education has requested
I wondered the
that we
same thing.
review these standards to see if there may be any, to see if changes need to be made. Your role on this committee will be to
Okay, so one of us would do the rationale where we having this
do
integrated
that.
into
identify
the basics of the overview and then we're gonna have research in each of the sections, just so you
You
know.
know, the
start
right,
here,
I
go
think
right,
it's something,
goes
that
here,
you're not gonna write,
in your own section, get more
you're not
detail
gonna
on
be
that.
writing the
If
standards,
facilitator training,
you're just
you'll
going
get
to
more
be
detail
providing
on all of it as well.
input to the writing
Does anybody
committee
have a preference who
that will
wants
be
to do
made
that?
up of
I will.
I wouldn't mind. doing
experts and whatnot,
It's like it also.
for things that they should, that should
Anybody,
be
unless
Unless
considered
someone else wants it.
if a revision is
I'm
deemed
fine with
necessary.
doing it, I think you have a good vision of like why it's in the order it's in.
So it would have to be something along the lines then of,
So the welcome and
those
logistics,
things that they-
anybody care?
those things in the current standards that should be continued to be
Day
taught.
that I,
It's the fifth, I think you can, but you might want to double check.
it's like the day that I can't do
Can
it.
somebody check to
Oh, I
see
see
though,
you
if,
and tag
There
you.
was some issue with.
in that 53A language, so this
think
is
February.
in the drive.
Which drive are we?
Is there a
template for the board memo?
I'm assuming that.
we're looking at in
I
staff
better
meetings
try.
and
Yeah,
standards
yeah.
revision templates.
I can just kind of do it. And we don't feel like you need to, because we just wanna make sure.
I'm sorry,
I just was like,
Yeah, all I'm doing is taking out the stuff that says science and.
Standard revision templates?
You're good.
Is
I
that-
mean, I was like, there's something weird about that day, I just can't
We
remember.
wanna support you in any way we can,
Yes,
we just
thank
wanna
you.
make sure that you're still okay with what we're doing.
Yes, no, I think this is a
Now I
great,
see where you're
I like
at.
where our framework has gone
53.
so far.
We'll have to leave by 12:30 to go.
Core
to-
standards,
There are
that very
three
first document?
templates.
I think the contract
Review
must start
committee.
working with them, so.
Right. What I need to see there is whether
The one
it
that-
says.
Well, they're gonna start with one.
53, 423.
Yeah, delete the others.
Here, want that?
Or is it the trigger rubric?
And if they have like logistical questions, we can answer
Right.
those.
You did the trigger rubric.
What I need to see is, does
Okay,
it say
so
anywhere down below where
so
it
then
says
we
five,
thought somebody would
does it
go
say
over the
five
templates and
parents
be like,
with
okay,
students
like you're gonna have a
actively?
facilitator's guide,
What I'm
you're
curious
gonna
about
have
is
a
whether
lesson
they
plan
need to be currently
template,
attending the
grade band
templates.
leads will, for each discipline, will modify
Hey,
it to meet that grade band
it's
need,
in
so
five, so
as a
it'll be
content team,
53
you'll come up with things that must be
E-4-203,
in each one, and then as
dash
your
5.
grading team, you'll kind of flesh out the details
Parentheses
of
5,
individual tasks.
and then it'll
like
say
that.
B,
And then this is what we were
that's
concerned
public
about,
education
which we brought up.
students,
Like,
appointed by the Speaker of the
that we
House
don't
of
want
Representatives, it does. So
way
it has
too
to be
much of like
students.
one specific
And
subject.
then,
Oh,
We
yeah.
just-
and
we
then
also
C,
don't want it to
first
be
part.
everything is second grade and nothing
is
is first
5
grade.
parents of public
So we're
education
gonna have a
appointed by the
form
President of the
for
Senate.
Yeah, so it is, they have to have students.
This is a template for.
Divvy that up.
Okay.
It says-
You want it in there now?
In the,
And do you feel comfortable explaining all the parts
would
of
you
like
be
the
safe in
facilitator's
saying
guide
in
and all
the
that?
grade levels
I'll come talk to you
being
beforehand.
Okay,
reviewed?
perfect.
Since this is the first time I've seen it, I'd be like, yeah, I'll come
Like, we
chat.
can't limit, as long as they have kids. who
And
belong
as you're
to
okay with
the
that.
schools, it's
Of
not
course.
grade level.
I just wanna make sure you're comfortable with it,
We
because we
could make
created it, sometimes it's hard to explain
in the
something someone else
language.
created.
You know, you know what I
So
mean?
if you want to, you can, if you
Like, I don't
don't
know
want to,
whether
we're
it
happy to
would
help or
make
do
more
it
sense
with
for
you.
a parent who's
I would
child
call
just
You just
with
let us
fifth
know.
Just
grade.
know that whenever I'm presenting, if you ever.
Yeah, like,
If
so
there's
what I
a
would
problem,
do
it
is I
doesn't
would
bug me
take.
whatsoever.
So that may be some
This
things to consider.
I'm always one of those where I'm.
He's gonna throw something and hit me and ask me
You're
a
gonna
question.
write your own
Cubicle.
But they need to know right to write. That's
But
what we
that's
want to
what
leave
it's
the
called.
sample.
Well, we have the sample, but we also have a template.
I need these five and these five.
Do you want this,
And then we
want this
figured like,
language?
we would each take
Yeah.
around each area and just say
Okay.
like, these are the things that must be in
Do we
ELA,
have the
these are the
sample
things
in
that
there?
must
Yeah, the
be
sample
in.
is in there. The
And I guess we should
sample
probably, I guess preschool,
That board
you guys
memo doc
have the
that
people
Ricky
that are in
put
the content area, so you can kind of hop around.
And we could even just rename it.
Have the people that have already been designed as the facilitators and stuff too, that are in the different. I just haven't told them what they're assigned to yet.
Okay, and for,
So
but
I
I
tell
think
them
at
what
this
they're
part though, like you guys will just kind of hop around, they
Yep,
will
that's
go to
great.
their content area, like I would think Kim would come to the math group, but then when we go to the grade band group, you guys could be more explicit on this is what needs to be included for preschool, this is what needs to be included for kindergarten. Okay, awesome, so we have these sort of
There's not a
templates.
health.
Yeah, or the pre-K stuff, so, and maybe we'll move the Jamie Jessica, yeah. So then the content work time, we were just thinking they would have like an hour and a half to kind of work in their content group
I'm looking
with
like, that's my
us
exact
still
thing.
being there as a support,
I just got it.
just to be like, what are
But
ideas
does it have
you
any-
have, what are some things you
Like,
think
it
we
just-
could include, like,
yeah,
just
right.
these
backup.
So basically,
Our
we
goals
have
are
that
like
45 minutes to
location.
really
That one's
get
done
them
too.
set up
Standard review.
to
committee
work
that be in the-
in their,
talks about
in their
What
content.
this committee should do shall consider when reviewing the
Here
content.
about us,
Giving
so
students
it's
an
kind
adequate
of
foundation
not
to
being able
successfully
to
pursue
I
college.
like that a lot.
Technical education occur early
Do you
in
remember
life.
which
So
one it is?
That's what they're looking
For the
for.
email.
Do these
Yeah,
standards
she,
meet
I don't
that
think she
criteria?
told me or put
That's
it on.
So then you'll just
But that would
be
be-
floating in the
That's
content time,
language.
checking on your pre-K
to the
group.
letter to the parent, you know.
Right.
They're not writing this.
Then we have lunch. More time, we felt like the majority of the time is gonna be that, filling out their tasks and getting those ready, so it felt like the majority of the day. And then we wanna.
And then
This is
their
just-
comments and recommendations for revision.
Facilitators or other lead designers.
Nine,
Do we want to give them an opportunity?
It'd be nice to
When I
actually
start
add in the
talking to
code
people
for
down
these
Cedar City,
steps
they're gonna be.
and the language
So
of
a
the
standards,
code.
re- so in nine, it says a standards review committee shall submit to the
So
state
they have other members
comments
that
and
they-
recommendations for revision to, of the core standards.
educators,
standard.
like, is there gonna be
That's all.
time for us to ask them?
Not
I
the
think it's
language,
up
and they're
to
not
you to
writing
choose.
it,
Like,
just
I had
what
a teacher
should
tell me,
be
"Oh, well, my friend's
considered
also
for
great at
revision.
early childhood," and I said, I
If you
selected
do
you
8
for
and
some
9,
strengths
that's
in your
all they,
application.
that's
We're
all
not
you do.
taking
Do
anyone
the
else at this
standard,
time.
you know, as you're reading the
It's your
standards,
choice.
do they provide an adequate foundation
I think it's
in this subject
I think
area
it's
for students to pursue college technical education.
I've had enough
Career
people
learning
apply for
officers.
math, and I don't want people not
And
completing applications.
what
at the same
revisions
time
or
that
comments do you
when
have?
especially when I don't know the people. Because it
Right.
was a person who just moved
That's
from
it.
out of state who I was like, wow, her application looks strong and didn't try to trust her.
I'm not.
And I didn't want her to
Yeah,
do
so-
it. I forgot my school.
I just touched that.
I think
Oh,
that's
okay.
great. I think it's, yeah.
I think that's all, that's the language.
So then we were
Draft.
thinking, after they had some
If you
time,
have
then
that,
they could take lunch, flexibly come back to work again. And then we would have Jody come in, teach the very specific 4 brain breaks, which she said would take less than 30 minutes. I'm thinking she's on board with the 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Maybe create just a folder that
And then
says
give them
like
more work to
specific.
Yeah, but then she also said.
And then so then we take all the science ones and all the health ones that are super specific and they're in one folder, so if someone wants to see exactly what someone else did.
Yeah.
it's
So that's what
there.
I did in the other one, and then
Yeah.
90 Day folder, so yeah, I do that
We
again.
create a folder.
And if she's shorter or whatever, like they just get more time, but she's gonna adjust those 2 standards, like here are the brain breaks, but then also here are,
Not necessarily.
some ideas about integrating. And then we were thinking, then they would move from their competencies to their brain.
Actually,
math.
10 is another thing that you can put in, there.
Does that make sense?
And we think that we need to assign a special
Into that letter to the
to,
parent.
the grade bands to
Your
check.
comments
So.
and recommendations will be given to the State Board of Education. The State Board shall take
She won't be here
into
this time, but I
consideration the
think over
comments and
all she
recommendations
can
of the
do.
standard
Oh, is she
group
coming back?
in adopting
They'll make him.
core standards for Utah Public Schools. So basically what you're saying,
That
you will submit your comment, they will then determine.
ERIKA.
You don't get to control.
Yeah, I know she's
When's it
over.
over?
I like it.
It says network literacy, 3rd grade reading, 1 to 2:30.
But like one of us, or like
At
Jamie or
Granite
Jessica
School
can
District.
also split if they're both there and like one kind of check in.
Oh, I don't think she's going to that anymore, so it should be fine.
And the board would then charge the writing committee, these are the things that they want to have addressed, I would assume it's.
Right, the writing committee will then look at.
Those recommend.
Is there, like, what
Board
kind of
rec-
template?
Because the board may say, I mean, there may something come out of that committee that they don't agree with, and
What kind of information
that's their
So
right.
then
in that
we
when
will-
it's?
In that, in
Eleven.
30 minutes, we're thinking we've got to.
11A gives the board.
Template, or do you just kind of want to use it?
Recommended or
Content
approved
for
from the
2
school.
days. Make sure that there's coherence, are there connections, so we wanna talk them through, have everyone probably talk through, what are you thinking about doing? So that
There's not really
we
a
can
template.
see, is it a nice flow for that grade band?
I think we're done.
Parents who
So
will be selected.
that's kind of the thinking, and then we have another half hour for them to make any revisions based on what we talked about, or to add to what they're starting. And really, that's our day, because after that, it's just a wrap up and talk about next steps.
We have a whole meeting. Any,
There's enough time for them to be able to do that.
well, I think it's brainstorming, it's not actually completing.
Right.
Because
And we'll
there's
have
no
to just
way.
be clear about that, I think.
But that's why they're getting stipends to design.
Not stipend.
Oh, not stipends. Oh, swear word.
They're not getting
Oh,
anything.
If we don't need a template, we probably don't need a examples folder, we make the board update examples.
Was that what was
Service
that?
right?
Service agreements, thank you.
There's not a template.
So maybe, like if we,
Because all of these are
that's my
examples.
sample.
Do you get what I'm saying?
I think there's a whole bunch of
Maybe take
questions.
them out of the
we
folder,
have to
delete the
ask
folder, and then
them.
change the
Some
name
the
of
stuff
this
she said
folder
like Karen would do, and then other stuff she said our support staff would do, and there's money and they can just go, so I think that's the question.
What I can tell you is
Add
that
it to list.
the standards.
Have we, there is a
usually
document I started
too many
questions
Still have
for
it
Jennifer.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, it's the statute says at least 2
So
minutes.
really-
Karen or other.
But usually, so what,
I think
if I were
we want
a parent
majority
being
of
asked
the
to
time
serve on this committee, I
them
wanna know
thinking
what am I
about the
signing?
task so that they
What
can
it
come to
says.
this
So my
with a
arthritis.
pretty
Look
good
at the
idea,
standards,
this is
it's
what
gonna
we're
focus
thinking.
on general
And have
then
them
leave
each
and go
share.
Off the nerve.
recommendations.
And yeah, have each of
This
them
one
share,
is-
So it's
oh,
just.
You're gonna
this
do
is a nice flow, or I'm concerned about this, or,
So
okay,
that I
so
would,
how
I
are we
think,
gonna fix that?
you know, not.
So I don't,
Tuesday,
yeah,
but
so I see that as just
Find
being
out
more
what-
of,
They weren't able to
let's
massage
decide where do the
I don't know
adjustments
if it would
like
be
to be made
helpful,
to what
I'm
you
just
have to
thinking of
have,
that process.
because now you're gonna be. in a
Perhaps
service
the-
agreement to Correct.
But it kind of freaked me out.
First meeting
Yeah.
ought to be a review
Yeah.
of the standards as they
My hands
currently
always
are
hurt.
with those people.
It's winter.
Then
Always
send
hurt.
them off.
But this was different, because this was like going up my arm, and like still is like all through here is like,
So-
I mean, you can feel it.
That's what I,
But it's like,
that's all that I, you know,
like if
that's
you
what.
sat on your foot too long.
Then they go out,
Yeah,
they
and when
look
it starts
at
to come
it,
back,
they've
it's
got
like,
their
I can
charge,
feel
they
it.
understand what it
Unless
is.
it's a template.
Yeah.
But from the
But it's
get-go,
like
they understand they're
words.
just going to be
But
getting
it's still
high
pins and
level.
needles.
But I
Like,
think
my
she'll-
fingers are all pins
if
and
you
needles.
look up on,
So sorry.
But my blood
our
pressure's great, my
meeting
heart rate's
specialist.
good, my oxygen's good.
So on the bright
decided
side,
who's doing
Yeah,
what, so
everything's
that's good.
good.
But what we
But
were
I
that you're
thinking about is
inflamed and it's.
we've gotta decide what grade levels, so like in
But yeah, so that's why I went to
for the
urgent care
2
and it took an
days
hour and a half.
in the first, second grade band,
Well, I'm
each
glad
of
they
those
figured it
subjects
out.
need to cover a first grade task, 2 of them need to cover a second grade task. And we've gotta have that divided up before we get there. That each, so that and like the 3-4 band, we don't want everyone to choose a 3rd grade task. So we need to say for ELA, you're doing 3rd grade, math, you're doing 4th grade, science, you're doing 3rd grade. Does that make sense?
So we're doing it by discipline?
Yeah, so divide, so we've gotta figure out, cause I don't want them just randomly telling us that day it's gonna
Right.
be utter chaos. That's why we thought,
I think that's fine.
what preferences do you guys have?
I don't think we have anything, scheduled. I'm wondering like if there's another time really soon that we could find. Right.
Fine, okay. So I'm gonna
Like
I should have let you know.
Cool.
Is there an update tonight?
I think we can still present updates.
I've gotta go and so I've got like 10
Now that's empty.
We have in the calendar. Do we
And
want
I
to
am to
schedule
remove
a
the
time?
folder.
I need to start labeling things math or integrated on my.
I do too.
I'm having a hard time being like, which one is for Jennifer, which one is for our elementary group, which one's for
I
me and
agree.
Jody. Yeah, we don't have any.
She's got it going on. She's got it going on right now. So she
They're just that.
Yeah, quick question for you though.
Like I had so
TV,
much.
that's all about curriculum directors. Is that, I saw that you sent the web link out. Was that one to Jerry, cause it's here, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's the one that I use for mine, so I can do the chat room. So I sent it to Jerry, so he's gonna work through that.
He's gonna work through it.
Samples.
That's
Cause he's
all
like,
I-
send me the link. Okay.
That's all. I'll be here tomorrow to do the tech stuff for it.
I didn't have
Yeah,
kids, like,
I
I'll
brought
write
your
down
back here.
and send
Oh.
it to my machine, but it is 2 hours.
Oh, my daughter did all of it.